Chapter 290. At this time, Lu Ping, who was in seclusion, had no idea that he had caused such a huge commotion during his breakthrough to the core forging realm. He had become a bottomless abyss that devoured the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Just as the 9 huge true essence droplets began to gather in his core space, Lu Ping's divine sense suddenly entered his core space and began to seep into the 9 true essence droplets. The North Sea Wave listening technique continuously absorbed the spiritual energy into his body and refined it into true essence. As the spiritual energy flowed through his veins, it finally gathered in the 9 true essence droplets. At the same time, Lu Ping's divine sense also gathered. Because of the divine sense's penetration, Lu Ping's initial condensed true essence contained spirituality. Because of the fusion of the divine sense and true essence, the spirituality of the bloodline was awakened. Lu Ping's magic power was too dense during the blood condensation realm. In the process of transforming it into true essence, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth reached a terrifying level. In addition to the North Sea Wave listening scripture, absorbing spiritual energy, Lu Ping also set up a spirit-gathering array formation that covered the entire cave dwelling. A total of 180 mid-grade spirit stones were embedded in the array formation. While the array formation gathered the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, it also continuously transmitted the spiritual energy into Lu Ping's body. A ball of light hung from Lu Ping's waist. Because of the gathering of spiritual energy, it also appeared to be purple. At this time, the 12 gentian beads in Lu Ping's core space were still rotating rapidly. In Lu Ping's core space, the 9 true essence beads were slowly approaching each other, forming a huge spiritual energy whirlpool. Compared to the spiritual energy whirlpool in Lu Ping's body, there was also a huge spiritual energy whirlpool formed in the sky above Lu Ping's cave. The spiritual energy from all directions gathered into this whirlpool, making it visible to everyone within a 10-mile radius of the cave. Heaven and Earth Anomaly. Heaven and Earth Anomaly. The movement caused by Lu Ping's breakthrough was too big. It was impossible for it not to attract attention. Which cultivator broke through to the core forging realm? Broke through to the core forging realm? How could this be a breakthrough to the core forging realm? I'm afraid a cultivator might even advance to the mid or late core forging stage. Impossible. When a cultivator breaks through to the mid or late core forging stage, they might be able to absorb so much worldly spiritual energy. However, these enlightened masters are already able to freely control the primary energy within their bodies. It is impossible for such a huge phenomenon to occur. Perhaps a certain perfected being wants to show off? I think there's an 80% chance that this Taoist master fused with a heaven and earth spirit item in the process of breaking through. That's why he didn't have the time to care about controlling the true yuan and heaven and earth spiritual energy in his body. Right at this moment, a wave of divine sense pressure came sweeping over, covering a radius of 4 miles around Lu Ping's cave abode. My divine sense has spread out in all directions. Sure enough, it's a Taoist master who has broken through to the middle stage core forging realm. It seems like this Taoist master has successfully broken through. It's just that this divine will pressure is a little too heavy. Could it be that this enlightened being is trying to establish his might? I think it's because the rank of the heaven and earth spirit item is too high. But heaven and earth spirit items can also strengthen the pressure of divine sense? This is new information. The 9 primary energy beads collided with each other in the core space, causing the worldly spiritual energy that was gathering towards Lu Ping to become turbulent. Wu Yin, who was outside the cave abode, was blown to the ground by the wave of spiritual energy. A voice that only Lu Ping could hear exploded in Lu Ping's mind. For a moment, Lu Ping lost control of his divine will, and it spread out in all directions. Everything within a radius of 4 miles appeared in Lu Ping's mind. Lu Ping could also hear the discussions of the cultivators. When Lu Ping's divine will returned to Lu Ping's control, the divine will above the cave abode had completely disappeared. However, the spiritual energy within a radius of 5 miles was still gathering towards Lu Ping's cave abode. At this time, the core space of Lu Ping's divine will had been dyed gold. In the center of the space, A huge, but somewhat unstable golden pill was tightly surrounded by 12 gentian beads that were emitting 5-colored light. Lu Ping's mind was closely connected with the golden pill. A part of Lu Ping's divine will had also penetrated into the golden pill, forming an inexplicable relationship with the golden pill. It was as if the golden pill was his second life, or as if it was an egg that was pregnant with life. The moment it broke out of the cocoon, it was the moment of his second life's revival. Forging core, third stage core forging stage, was the process of forging one's own divine will into the golden pill. Now, Lu Ping's divine will had formed a close relationship with the golden pill. Only when all of Lu Ping's divine will was forged into the golden pill, and during this period, the spiritual energy of the golden pill would be stimulated and strengthened by the spiritual energy of the golden pill 3 times in a row. Only then would the golden pill break out of the cocoon and become a Dharma idol. Lu Ping didn't have time to think about the future. Right now, he was extremely happy. After more than 20 years of painstaking cultivation, Lu Ping had finally formed a golden pill, becoming a high-level cultivator in the cultivation world. The spiritual energy was still continuously gathering. Lu Ping's golden pill had not yet been completely consolidated, and the real elemental energy in his blood vessels had been depleted due to the final condensation of the golden pill. The process of gathering spiritual energy within a 10-mile radius lasted for 3 whole months. During these 3 months, the area where Lu Ping was located seemed to have become a bottomless abyss of spiritual energy. No matter how much spiritual energy was gathered, it couldn't fill up this bottomless abyss. The cave that Lu Ping rented was one of the 24 Earth-rank caves in the Northern Alliance. The density of the spiritual energy in the cave was equivalent to a medium-sized spiritual vein. Even so, under the combined effect of 3 spirit-gathering formations, Lu Ping was barely enough for Lu Ping's use. This wasn't because Lu Ping's need for spiritual energy was so great. It was because after Lu Ping broke through to the core forging stage, he had to consolidate his cultivation. This consolidation process was also a significant growth process for Lu Ping's cultivation. Not to mention, Lu Ping had taken 10 golden blood condensing pills. The essence of the blood vessels in the 10 pills was easily swallowed by Lu Ping's blood vessels. However, the spiritual energy in the 10 pills came from the golden pill of a second-stage core forging master. How could Lu Ping easily refine it? 3 months passed by quickly, and the gathering of spiritual energy finally stopped. Fortunately, there were no other caves built by the Northern Alliance nearby. Otherwise, under Lu Ping's influence, he wouldn't be able to cultivate at all. However, Lu Ping's breakthrough caused such a huge commotion that people within a 10-mile radius of Qinyuan City could see the phenomenon of heaven and earth when Lu Ping broke through. Half of the cultivators in Qinyuan City were talking about a core forging enlightened master who was refining a spiritual object. Because the spiritual object's grade was too high, he lost control of his spiritual sense and spiritual energy, causing a phenomenon of heaven and earth. Naturally, Lu Ping's breakthrough couldn't be hidden from the Northern Alliance. At least, the Northern Alliance knew that the person who went into seclusion in that cave was not a core forging enlightened master, but a peak blood condensation realm cultivator. Moreover, he was the famous alchemist Lu Jiu from the Northern Alliance's pill gathering. 3 months later, when Lu Ping's cave no longer gathered spiritual energy, the Northern Alliance's alchemist master Immortal Qin and Hongya Laozu's personal disciple, Zhou Chuang, the alchemist genius who won first place in this year's pill gathering, paid a visit together. Although the trembling Wu Yin was terrified in front of Taoist Master Qin, who had reached the late stage of the core forging realm, she still explained everything clearly. Fellow Taoist Lu Jiu is still in seclusion? Immortal Qin frowned and asked. Yes. Wu Yin finally calmed down from her initial panic and let out a long sigh of relief before replying. Young Master said that after this breakthrough, due to the previous preparations, a large number of elixirs have yet to be refined in my body. If I cannot refine and eliminate them in time, it will greatly hinder my cultivation, so I need to continue my closed-door cultivation. Then, do you know when fellow Taoist Lu Jiu will come out of seclusion? For some reason, a trace of envy flashed across Immortal Qin's face. I don't know about this. Young Master didn't say clearly. He only said that after refining the accumulated medicinal energy in his body and completely stabilizing his cultivation, he will come out of seclusion. He didn't mention the specific date. Wu Yin answered. Wu Yin still answered in a methodical manner. Talking with a core forging enlightened master was something that Wu Yin didn't even dare to imagine before. She felt an inexplicable sense of accomplishment in her heart. All right then. When Lu Daoyu comes out of seclusion, I will visit again. After leaving the cave, Zhou Chuang couldn't help but ask, Senior brother, did Lu Ju really become an alchemy grandmaster in the blood condensation realm? Immortal Qin answered unhurriedly, otherwise, how do you think he passed the first inheritance test of an alchemy grandmaster? You also passed a grandmaster test. Don't you know the specific situation? Zhou Chuang was silent for a moment. Unfortunately, he didn't pass the other grandmaster test. So he still had some reservations in the alchemy gathering? Immortal Qin heard the unwillingness in Zhou Chuang's words. He said slowly, the cultivation world is full of crouching tigers and hidden dragons. There are countless talented cultivators. Who dares to say that they are the best in the world? You must know that there is always a higher mountain and a higher mountain. Walking your own path and not being moved by external factors is the most valuable. Zhou Chuang silently followed behind Immortal Qin. After a while, he calmly said, Senior brother is right. Junior brother has learned something. Immortal Qin saw that Zhou Chuang's temperament and demeanor had changed greatly in a short period of time. He secretly sighed at this junior brother's intelligence, but he still said, Junior brother's cultivation is about to break through. Your foundation is also extremely solid. After this time, prepare to break through to the core forging realm. After Immortal Qin and Zhou Chuang left, the leader of the Dark Mountain Gang, Qiao Jingyin, who knew about the cave, also came to visit with a young cultivator with a pale face. Then, Chu Ting and Li Xiuzhu from the Listening Small Building also came to visit. They were also told by Wu Yin that Lu Ping was in seclusion and couldn't be disturbed, so they left. At this time, Lu Ping was going through a process of accumulating his strength in his cave dwelling, and this process even caught him off guard. Chapter 291. Lu Ping didn't expect the golden blood condensing pill to be so powerful. Lu Ping's original intention was to use the golden core to supplement his bloodline, but he neglected the enormous amount of true essence contained within the golden core. Moreover, Taoist Jianli wasn't an ordinary core forging enlightened master. When Lu Ping awoke from seclusion, it had been almost a year since Lu Ping broke through to the core forging realm. The golden core in his core space had already retracted its dazzling golden glow. Lu Ping had a strange expression on his face as he felt the enormous amount of true essence within his body. His cultivation had already reached the peak of the first layer of core forging and could advance to the second layer at any time. Lu Ping pondered for a moment. The 12 gentian pearls suddenly appeared around Lu Ping from his core space. Immediately after, rumbling sounds could be heard from the cave as if it was about to collapse. Lu Ping hurriedly withdrew the gentian pearls into his body. The restrictions surrounding the cave quieted down, and Lu Ping let out a long sigh of relief. Although the gentian pearls had only been summoned for a short period of time, Lu Ping could still feel the ease of using them. Moreover, their power had increased exponentially. Compared to the blood condensation realm, the core forging realm was truly a qualitative leap. However, Lu Ping felt a headache when he thought about the 12 gentian pearls he would have to start engraving restrictions on after he reached the core forging realm and then nurture them into transcendent artifacts. Apart from the fact that Lu Ping wasn't proficient in refining, nurturing 12 gentian pearls at once was not an easy task. Moreover, once the gentian pearls were upgraded into transcendent artifacts, Lu Ping would face the same predicament as when he was in the blood condensation realm. After using them for a few rounds, his true essence would be exhausted. Lu Ping pondered for a moment, then stretched out his hand and pointed. 1,296 sword lights immediately appeared around Lu Ping. With Lu Ping's will, these 1,000 sword lights began to display different sword techniques, sword styles, and sword moves. It was as if more than 1,000 people were controlling them. 1,296 spiritual sword lights. Lu Ping clenched his right hand. and the 1,296 psychic sword flashes gathered together. A 3-foot-long sword began to gather in Lu Ping's hand. The hilt, calyx, blade, and blade took shape one by one. However, just as the tip of the sword was about to take shape, Lu Ping's expression changed. The final 81 psychic sword flashes did not successfully gather and dispersed. Lu Ping sighed resentfully. In the end, he was still lacking one last bit. He had not reached the realm of unity of sword and practice. He was still one step away from the highest realm of sword intent. Lu Ping waved his hand and dispersed the sword light. Then, he took out the golden scale sword from his storage ring. A huge amount of true essence immediately cleansed the golden scale sword that contained Lu Ping's divine sense and transcendence energy. One of the biggest characteristics of the core forging realm was that one's true essence and divine sense would begin to fuse to the greatest extent. This was unlike the blood condensation realm, where one's transcendence energy and divine sense were separate. This was also the fundamental reason why many divine abilities and spells could only be displayed and cultivated in the core forging realm. Wielding the golden scale sword once again, Lu Ping felt a lot more relaxed. In the blink of an eye, the jerkiness of wielding the golden scale sword had completely disappeared. The amount of true essence Lu Ping had expended was also greatly reduced, and the golden scale sword's power was truly displayed. With Lu Ping's current strength, even enlightened Master Jinli at his peak might not be his match, not to mention the masked assassin in linen who had tried to assassinate him earlier. Lu Ping made a slight hand seal, and the golden scale sword stabbed back at Lu Ping. In an instant, it entered Lu Ping's body. In Lu Ping's core space, a small flying sword was revolving around the golden core at the periphery of the 12 gentian pearls. At the same time, a portion of the true essence that Lu Ping had gathered from his bloodline through cultivation was also used by Lu Ping to nourish the golden scale sword. Storing an artifact into one's body was a technique that only enlightened masters of the core forging realm could do. As for blood condensation realm cultivators, they could only store their natal magic weapons into their bodies. The golden scale sword was originally enlightened Master Jin Li's natal magic weapon. During its refinement, many top-grade, second-grade spiritual materials had been mixed into it. It was obvious that enlightened Master Jin Li regarded his natal magic weapon with great importance. The golden scale sword's potential for improvement was far greater than just a single restriction treasure. Naturally, Lu Ping wouldn't let such a good sword go to waste. After storing the golden scale sword into his core space, Lu Ping's spirits suddenly rose. Then, he flicked his finger with the storage ring, and a 3-legged cauldron that was half the height of a person landed in front of Lu Ping. The Na Chuan cauldron. Lu Ping had been drooling over it for a long time, but he had been unable to refine it due to his own transcendence energy, not to mention using a top-grade pill furnace. Now, Lu Ping finally had the confidence to try refining it. With his current true essence, which far surpassed cultivators of the same level, refining this huge cauldron shouldn't be too much of a problem, right? In the end, Lu Ping was still somewhat apprehensive, but he still inserted his true essence into the pill furnace without hesitation and began refining it. Lu Ping's complexion was slightly pale as he stared at the Na Chuan cauldron that was revolving around the golden core in his core space. Although Lu Ping had already estimated the difficulty of refining the Na Chuan cauldron, he still hadn't expected that this pill furnace would be so difficult to refine. Even with Lu Ping's current cultivation, he had to consume nearly 1/3 of his true essence to refine this treasure into his core space. Fortunately, if Lu Ping used the Na Chuan cauldron to refine pills, he wouldn't have to waste so much true essence. However, as soon as the Na Chuan cauldron entered the core space, it directly drove the golden scale sword to the outermost area, occupying the position where the golden scale sword used to be. Moreover, after being nourished by the true essence emitted by Lu Ping's golden core, the amount of true essence it could absorb was not below that of a gentian pearl. If it weren't for the fact that the 12 gentian pearls were Lu Ping's life-bonded magic tool, Lu Ping even suspected that the Na Chuan cauldron would try to occupy the position of the gentian pearl. It must be known that the closer one was to the golden core, the more true essence the magic tools would receive, and the greater the benefits they would obtain. Lu Ping was originally excited to upgrade the Na Chuan cauldron into a magic tool because of the precious restriction of the alchemy cauldron, but now he had already extinguished that thought. Not to mention that upgrading a top-grade alchemy cauldron into a magic tool, it needed to be done by a Grand Master of Alchemy and a Grand Master of Alchemy. Even if there wasn't a Grand Master of Alchemy, it still needed the cooperation of a Grand Master of Alchemy and a Grand Master of Alchemy to have a chance of success. If he was lucky enough to upgrade the Na Chuan cauldron into a magic tool, with Lu Ping's current strength, he would definitely not be able to use it proficiently. Moreover, Lu Ping's life-bonded gentian pearl was still a top-grade magic tool. If the Na Chuan cauldron was upgraded into a magic tool, it was very likely to be occupied by a sparrow. In the core space, the gentian pearl would be pushed to the outermost area, just like the golden scale sword. Now, a top-grade alchemy cauldron was enough for Lu Ping to use. It must be known that Yin Wujiu, as a Grand Master of Alchemy, only had a top-grade alchemy cauldron. In the entire Jinling cauldron, there were only 3 top-grade alchemy cauldron. Lu Ping took out the Na Chuan cauldron, and the sea blue spiritual fire excitedly licked the bottom of the Na Chuan cauldron. The temperature in the training room rose rapidly, and it faintly melted the restriction in the cave mansion. Lu Ping thought for a moment, and his hands formed 9 seals in a row. The surrounding restrictions shook for a moment, and then there was no more movement. The temperature in the cave mansion also seemed to have dropped. Art of deceiving the heavens and crossing the sea. After Lu Ping advanced to the core forging stage, the power of the North Sea 12 authentic laws seemed to have suddenly risen to a higher level along with Lu Ping's cultivation. The puppet boy pounded 27 kinds of 1,000-year-old spirit grasses and dozens of 500-year-old spirit grasses, and then Lu Ping put them into the alchemy cauldron and began to refine them. After the fire stabilized, the puppet boy was released, and he let it take care of the alchemy cauldron, while Lu Ping closed his eyes and meditated to restore the qi in his body. This time, Lu Ping was not willing to use the little purple crystal royal jelly, not to mention the few remaining high-grade spirit stones. Instead, he used the middle-grade spirit stones to cast the spirit explosion technique twice. After the purification technique and the core condensation technique, the Na Chuan cauldron was opened, and the 4 golden yuan dawn just flew out of the alchemy cauldron. They were imprisoned by Lu Ping and then stored in a jade crystal bottle. The success rate of 40%. Although the golden yuan dan was one of the lowest-level medicinal pills in the core forging stage, the success rate of 40% did indeed confirm Lu Ping's identity as an alchemy master. It was not like when he accepted the test in the Ziyue Cave Heaven. Except for the blue spiritual fire, Lu Ping almost used all of his trump cards, and he still had to rely on luck to pass the Grandmaster Inheritance test. With this 40% success rate, Lu Ping finally seemed to have made up his mind. He reached his hand into an open book on the side and started reading. In the Qianzhong millet, there was a beautiful bird about a foot in size singing on the peach tree. On the side, there was a somewhat silly but similar-looking bird standing on the branch of the peach tree, as if it was listening attentively. The lush peach tree swayed with the bird singing even though there was no wind. The rustling of the branches and leaves seemed to be accompanying the singing bird. At this moment, a giant hand broke through the air and interrupted the bird's singing. The giant hand made a stroke in the spiritual herb garden in the Qianzhong millet space, and 3 golden 1,000-year-old spiritual herbs fell into the hands of the giant hand, and then the giant hand disappeared. The little bird looked at the place where the giant hand had disappeared, and then began to sing as if nothing had happened. The peach tree was still playing the accompaniment. The other little bird jumped on the tree, clearly feeling that there was something different about the giant hand just now, but it was immediately attracted by the beautiful little bird's song. Golden Marrowgrass. Chapter 292. Compared to when Lu Ping was in Ziyue Cave Heaven, Lu Ping's pill furnace had changed from a high-grade to a top-grade Na Chuan cauldron. His fire seed had changed from a top-grade level 3 bright yellow fire seed to a top-grade profound level blue spiritual fire. His cultivation had also advanced from the peak of the blood condensation realm to the peak of the first stage of the core forging realm. He even had the spirit explosion technique, a secret alchemy technique. It could be said that Lu Ping had made great progress in all aspects. The only difference was that the gold essence pill, which was the easiest to refine, had been changed to the relatively more difficult gold essence pill. In fact, Lu Ping wanted to first concoct a few cauldrons of medicinal pellets, similar to the golden essence pellets, to familiarize himself with the difficulty of concocting core forging realm medicinal pellets. Then, he would slowly advance and start concocting the golden marrow pellets. Unfortunately, after concocting the only cauldron of golden essence pellets, Lu Ping ran out of 1,000-year spirit herbs. Lu Ping originally thought that after he advanced to the core forging realm and became an alchemy master, it would be much easier for him to obtain 1,000-year-old spirit herbs. However, he neglected the fact that after he advanced to the core forging realm, his demand for 1,000-year-old spirit herbs had increased. Although it had become extremely easy to obtain 1,000-year-old spirit herbs after he became an alchemy master, the demand for them had increased. Lu Ping finally realized the fact that a core forging realm enlightened master was far inferior to a blood condensation realm cultivator when it came to refining pills. The most obvious example was the pill shops in Qinyuan City. Cultivators might have the opportunity to buy some blood condensation realm pills, but core forging realm pills were out of the question. Generally, these pills would only appear in auctions for core forging realm enlightened masters, or they would be used to barter between core forging realm enlightened masters. Now, Lu Ping's spiritual sense had experienced a sharp increase after advancing to the core forging stage. After his cultivation finally stabilized at the peak of the first layer of the core forging stage, his spiritual sense once again slowly increased. Now, it could almost cover a radius of 5 miles. Although the Na Chuan cauldron was still a bit strenuous for Lu Ping to control, its ability to extract, refine, and condense the spiritual power of spirit grasses was undoubtedly far superior to that of a high-grade cauldron. Coupled with the use of the purple crystal royal jelly, at the last moment of condensing the pills, Lu Ping crushed 4 mid-grade spirit stones and used the spirit explosion art to save the 2 pills that were about to explode. After opening the cauldron, 5 golden marrow pills danced in the air. Lu Ping was overjoyed. In his excitement, Lu Ping also took out the 3 golden marrow grasses that he had obtained from Failing Island. Together with the remaining 2 golden marrow grasses, he refined another 5 batches of golden marrow pills. In total, he obtained a total of 30 pills. The price was that Lu Ping had completely used up all the 1,000-year-old spirit grasses in his possession. Only the last third of the purple crystal royal jelly was left. Fortunately, these 30 golden marrow pills, together with the 4 golden essence pills from before, were enough for Lu Ping to use for a period of time. One had to know that a core forging realm enlightened master could only rely on spirit stones and spirit veins to cultivate. For enlightened masters, pills were like meat to mortals. Usually, they would eat them as fresh meat to satisfy their cravings. They would only save up until the new year. It was the same for a core forging realm enlightened master. Generally, they would save up pills, and when they encountered a bottleneck in their cultivation, they would break through in one go. After his cultivation, strength, and alchemy skills had continuously surprised Lu Ping, who was about to come out of his closed-door cultivation, remembered that he still had 4 purple jade slips that sealed his divine sense. Until now, Lu Ping still didn't know the contents of the jade slips. Now that Lu Ping's cultivation had reached the core forging realm, his divine sense had merged with the true essence in his body. These jade slips could no longer block Lu Ping's probing. Among the 4 jade scrolls, 2 of them were obtained by Lu Ping after he helped Qi Lianian kill Hong Shikue. Lu Ping probed one of the jade scrolls with his divine sense and found that it was a medicinal pellet recipe for a core forging realm medicinal pellet called the Crystal Mystic Core Pellet. At first glance, this medicinal pellet was obviously a core forging realm medicinal pellet recipe from the Crystal Palace. Fortunately, this medicinal pellet was suitable for Lu Ping's early core forging realm cultivation base. Not only did Lu Ping lack 1,000-year-old spirit herbs, but he also lacked a pill recipe for the core forging realm. As an alchemy grandmaster, Lu Ping only had the golden essence pill, the golden marrow pill, and a pill recipe for the 1,000 seeker pill that he obtained from the Fei Ling sect. In total, he only had these 3 pill recipes for the core forging realm. Now that he had the crystal profound pill, Lu Ping had another option to refine pills for the core forging realm. After opening the second jade slip, Lu Ping was overjoyed. After killing Hong Shikue, what Lu Ping valued the most was the pair of ice and fire bracelets. Moreover, Hong Shikue had condensed more than half of the treasure restriction in it. Unfortunately, the ice and fire bracelets had not been completed yet, and Hong Shikue had died in the hands of Lu Ping. When condensing the treasure restriction in this pair of magic treasures, it would often be two treasure restrictions that could be fused with each other. When fighting against the enemy, its power was no less than a magic treasure that had condensed three treasure restrictions. It was the most strange and unpredictable. Unfortunately, Lu Ping did not have the method to use this pair of ice and fire bracelets. The two incomplete treasure restrictions were also not available. Lu Ping once wanted to use high-grade spiritual fire and ice to forcibly drive the ice and fire bracelets. This was also the reason why Lu Ping was so happy when he found the black prison poison fire seed in the broken Ziyue cave heaven. The black prison poison fire could only be used to refine poisonous pills. In addition, it was also a great weapon to fight against the enemy. What Lu Ping didn't expect was that the Jade Slip recorded the ice and fire bracelets' two contrasting enchantments, one ice and one fire. What was even more delightful was that the Jade Slip also contained the secret art to control the set of enchantments. Unfortunately, in the end, Lu Ping's cultivation method was still unable to fully unleash the power of the ice and fire bracelets. However, with the treasure restriction method, Lu Ping realized that his previous idea of using high-grade fire seeds and ice attribute spiritual materials to replace the ice and fire attributes that quintessential essence could not achieve was completely feasible. With the treasure restriction method, Lu Ping could unleash the power of the ice and fire bracelets on his own. The third Jade Slip that Lu Ping obtained was in the Golden Valley of the Seven-Star Sky. Lu Ping found the remains of the North Sea's Liao family's alchemy master, Reverend Liao Ding. From the storage bracelet of the remains, the most valuable thing that Lu Ping obtained was not the magic treasure medicine pounding pestle, but the pill formula for the heart-dissolving pill. And this Jade Slip was placed together with the pill formula for the heart-dissolving pill. How could Lu Ping not let his imagination run wild? A tyrannical divine sense wrapped in Lu Ping's robust quintessential essence instantly tore the seal on the surface of the Jade Slip. Lu Ping's divine sense probed inside and immediately revealed a shocked expression. As Lu Ping probed for a long time, Lu Ping's brows furrowed even more tightly. After a long time, Lu Ping slowly opened his eyes and murmured, "The cultivation world really does have a heart-forging pill." The heart-forging pill was similar to the heart-dissolving pill, which could raise a blood condensation realm cultivator's cultivation level by 1 level without harming their foundation. The heart-forging pill could also raise a core-forging realm enlightened master's cultivation level by 1 level without harming their foundation. However, this kind of heaven-defying pill had a limit. It was only effective for early core forging realm cultivators. Once a cultivator reached the mid-core forging realm, they would inevitably fuse with the spirit objects of heaven and earth, causing the spirituality of their bloodline to recover. At the same time, the forging of divine sense and golden core would reach a new level. Even so, if this kind of pill appeared in the cultivation world, it would inevitably cause an uproar in the cultivation world. It would set off a reign of terror. This kind of pill was not only useful for early core forging realm cultivators, but also for a sect. It could collectively raise a group of early core forging realm enlightened masters to the mid-core forging realm. This was the equivalent of shortening the cultivation time of early core forging realm cultivators by 30 years. For cultivators who had always been in a race against their lifespan, the importance of this pill was self-evident. Lu Ping had a hard time calming his excited mood. After advancing to the core forging realm, Lu Ping thought that his state of mind would no longer be affected by external factors. He didn't expect that the heart-forging pill would cause him to panic. After calming down, Lu Ping realized that it was extremely difficult to refine this heart-forging pill. This was because this pill was not for the core forging realm. The first 3 spirit herbs in the pill recipe were 3,000 years old, 9 fold grass, 7 battle flower, and yin-yang branch. This meant that this pill, which was suitable for early core forging realm cultivators, was actually a half-step transcendence realm pill that was in between the core forging realm and the transcendence realm pill. There were 36 types of 1,000-year-old spirit herbs and 30 types of 500-year-old spirit herbs. For Lu Ping's current alchemy skills, this was a level that he didn't dare to attempt. Of course, Lu Ping would never give up on the heart-forging pill. This was a great temptation for any cultivator. Even if Lu Ping's alchemy skills did not meet the requirements, after Lu Ping's cultivation reached the second stage of the core forging realm, he would still take the risk. Even if he destroyed all the spirit herbs that he had painstakingly collected, he would not hesitate. What's more, Lu Ping rummaged through the storage ring and found a jade essence box. After opening it, there were 9 well-preserved 3,000-year-old spirit herbs. These were the 9 3,000-year-old spirit herbs that enlightened Master Liao Ding had prepared to collect before he died in the Golden Valley. The 9-fold grass and 7 battle flower were impressively among them. There were 3 9-fold grass and 2 7 battle flowers. Obviously, enlightened Master Liao Ding sealed his cultivation and risked his life to enter the core area of the Golden Valley to collect these 2 spirit herbs. Unfortunately, a dignified enlightened master died at the hands of the blood-melting mosquitoes. In other words, of the 3 most important spirit herbs for refining the heart-forging pill, Lu Ping now had 2 of them in his hands. Lu Ping took out a big wooden table. On the table, images of various spirit herbs, including their names, growth habits, medicinal values, and so on appeared. Lu Ping found the image of the yin-yang branch and firmly remembered it in his mind. Then, Lu Ping also found the other 36 kinds of 1,000-year-old spirit herbs that Lu Ping had never seen before on the big wooden table. This was to prevent Lu Ping from missing them the next time he encountered them. The last jade scroll was obtained by Lu Ping in the mysterious cave of an enlightened master on Failing Island. One of the 2 jade scrolls recorded the other part of the North Sea wave listening technique that Lu Ping was currently practicing, the flying spirit sea wave treading technique. The other jade scroll recorded the natal gentian formation that Lu Ping was currently practicing. Therefore, Lu Ping had the highest expectations for this jade scroll. At the same time, Lu Ping also hoped that this jade scroll contained all the records of the Lin high wave listening technique. This was because the Lin high wave listening technique that Lu Ping had initially practiced was an inheritance that Jinling had received from the Failing sect. Moreover, this technique had started to become incomplete after reaching the Dharma stage. Later, although it had been supplemented and improved by generations of Jinling practitioners, and was enough for a practitioner to practice until the mid-Dharma stage, how could Lu Ping be satisfied with the mid-Dharma stage? Now that Lu Ping had merged the Lin high wave listening technique and the flying spirit sea wave treading technique, the training method after the mid-Dharma stage had become clearer. However, Lu Ping was more concerned about what kind of level he would reach when the 2 complete techniques were completely merged. However, judging from the disappointed expression on Lu Ping's face after he had used his divine will to explore the Jade Scroll, Lu Ping's hopes had obviously been dashed. Come to think of it, if the flying spirit sea wave treading technique had not been sealed by his divine will, then how could the Lin high wave listening technique have been sealed? However, Lu Ping's expression immediately became one of shock. The shock on his face became more and more intense, even more so than Lu Ping's expression when he had seen the heart-forging elixir formula. Chapter 293. Skyrend was the most powerful sect in the southernmost part of the East Sea. In the East Sea, where the Crystal Palace was the most powerful sect, Skyrend was closest to the Northern Alliance, one in the south and the other in the north. Silver Sword Island was one of the 3 large islands belonging to Sky Fisher Sword sect. It was second only to the sect's base, Jade Sword Island, and the most prosperous island, Gold Sword Island. Among the 5 great sects of the Eastern Sea, Sky Fisher Sword sect was the only one that did not have a large island as its base. Silver Sword Island was located at the southernmost part of Skyrend, closest to the Demon Sea region. It was also the front line of Skyrend's defense against the demon race. On this day, the long-distance teleportation array in the center of Silver Sword Island suddenly lit up. After the silver light dissipated, a young cultivator in his 20s walked out of the teleportation array, much to everyone's surprise. The teleportation formation on Silver Sword Island was very unique. The entire formation was carved into a huge platform, and the formation was divided into 3 concentric circles. The innermost circle was the short-range teleportation formation, which was normally only used by the various islands under the Skysplitter Sword sect's jurisdiction. The middle circle and the smallest circle formed a medium-range teleportation formation, which connected the various powers under the Skysplitter Sword Sect's jurisdiction. The long-range teleportation formation was the passageway between the Skysplitter Sword Sect and the other sects of the Eastern Sea. Why are there more and more foreign cultivators lately? Exactly. I don't know how many times this long-distance teleportation array has lit up in the past few months, but there are also many people coming from the sea. The number of foreign cultivators on Silver Sword Island has been increasing lately. As soon as Lu Ping stepped out of the teleportation array, the discussions of the cultivators around him naturally didn't escape his ears. He frowned. His instincts told him that something had happened, so he looked outside the teleportation array and found an early-stage blood condensation cultivator. He tossed a storage pouch over and said, "You're a cultivator guide for Silver Sword Island, right? Follow me for now. This is your first time here, so there are many places you're not familiar with." This blood condensation cultivator was originally the leader of a group of tour guides. Usually, he would guide newcomers to Silver Sword Island. Normally, he wouldn't have to do such things himself. But when Lu Ping threw him an interspatial pouch and asked him to lead the way, the cultivator was about to refuse. But when he subconsciously scanned the interspatial pouch with his divine sense, he was stunned. Then, he pretended to sweep his divine sense across the young cultivator in front of him and was shocked. His divine sense swept across the young cultivator's body, but it was as if he was a clay ox that disappeared into the sea. There was no response at all. "As you wish, Senior." Seeing the faint smile on Lu Ping's face, the blood condensation cultivator broke out in a cold sweat. Under the confused gazes of the surrounding minor repairs cultivators, the blood condensation cultivator respectfully led Lu Ping towards the center of Silver Sword Island. Why did Brother Stone come out personally today? Yeah, didn't Brother Stone quit being a cultivator guide? Last time, a peak blood condensation cultivator asked Brother Stone for help, but he didn't even respond. Yeah, our cultivator guide might be weak, but he has Skyren behind him. How did Brother Stone come out so easily this time? Didn't you see that person give Brother Stone a storage pouch? There must be at least 500 spirit stones in it. Otherwise, Brother Stone wouldn't be bowing to him. I think that person must be some big shot. Brother Stone is in a hurry to curry favor with him. Amidst the commotion, the teleportation array lit up again. A few cultivators appeared on the teleportation platform, and the noisy minor repairs cultivators immediately quietened down. Business had arrived. So, the large number of cultivators coming to Silver Sword Island happened 3 months ago after the Crystal Palace cultivators had a conflict with Skyren's patrolling cultivators? Lu Ping asked thoughtfully. Brother Stone walked beside Lu Ping, half a body length behind. That's right. At that time, Skyren's patrolling cultivators discovered traces of a suspicious cultivator in the ocean, so they started tracking him. In the end, they discovered a group of Crystal Palace cultivators doing some shady business in the ocean. After their tracks were exposed, the Crystal Palace cultivators tried to silence Skyren's patrolling cultivators. Silence them? Lu Ping smiled and said, "That's quite similar to the overbearing style of Crystal Palace." When Brother Stone heard Lu Ping's words, the cautious look on his face immediately disappeared. How could Lu Ping not notice the change in Brother Stone's expression? Lu Ping knew that these cultivators were usually the most well-informed. While providing information to foreign cultivators, they were also the eyes and ears of the local forces. Lu Ping did not think too much about it. Brother Stone continued, "That's right." However, the Crystal Palace cultivators did not expect that after Skyren's patrolling cultivators discovered traces of the suspicious cultivator, they realized that the intruder was very powerful. They had already notified Skyren's high-ranking cultivators beforehand. When the Crystal Palace cultivators were massacring Skyren's cultivators, Skyren's high-ranking cultivators rushed over and joined the battle. Thus, the conflict between the two sides erupted. What were the casualties on both sides? Brother Stone said honestly, "I don't know. Both sides blocked the news. However, it is said that the Crystal Palace discovered a treasure in the outer seas of Silver Sword Island and wanted to monopolize it. However, Skyren caught them red-handed. After a fierce battle, they realized that the gains did not make up for the losses. Thus, they agreed to divide the treasure equally. However, they did not expect the news to spread, and the more bizarre it became, the more cultivators from the East Sea came to Silver Sword Island. Lu Ping naturally knew that the matter was not as simple as it seemed. The strangest thing was that the suspicious cultivator who led Skyren's patrolling cultivators to the outer seas and encountered the Crystal Palace cultivators. Anyone with a discerning eye could tell that the mysterious cultivator had deliberately exposed the traces of the Crystal Palace. In the end, the two sides suppressed the conflict. They probably realized that they had fallen into someone else's trap. The news that the Crystal Palace had discovered a treasure in the outer seas of Silver Sword Island and clashed with Skyren was probably leaked by this person. For no reason, Lu Ping connected Uncle Master Liang Xianfeng, who had come to Silver Sword Island 2 years ago, to the cultivator who had schemed against the two sections. Brother Stone brought Lu Ping around Silver Sword Island for 2 days. Not only did he visit all the shops on the island, but he also gave Lu Ping a detailed introduction of the surrounding seas. Brother Stone might only be an early blood condensation cultivator, but he knew the surrounding seas like the back of his hand. He even knew a thing or two about the outer seas. The outer seas of the Silver Sword Island were equivalent to the buffer zone of the North Sea. Without the sea restriction, it was impossible for someone of Stone's cultivation to reach the outer seas. As such, someone must have informed him of the situation in the outer seas. One day, they arrived at the entrance of a cultivator's inn. Lu Ping suddenly stopped and said, "All right, you've done well for the past 2 days. This is your reward. Go back and cultivate well." Brother Stone wasn't surprised. He'd clearly seen this kind of thing many times. He tightly grasped the 2 jade bottles Lu Ping threw to him, thanked Lu Ping, and left in a hurry. Seeing Brother Stone leave, Lu Ping shook his head with a smile. He seemed to see the shadow of himself in these cultivators when he was still in the blood condensation and blood refining realms. Therefore, Lu Ping always helped them subconsciously. Little Air on Autumn Cloud Island, Little Sima on Sanja Island, and now Brother Stone was the same. Lu Ping mocked himself. Then, he discreetly glanced at a mark outside the inn's door that looked like it had been knocked over. He then walked straight in. "Kid, you've really broken through to the core forging realm, and you've reached such a level?" Enlightened Master Liang Xianfeng looked like he'd seen a ghost when he saw Lu Ping. Lu Ping was stunned when he saw a female cultivator in the core forging realm in the living room. It turned out that this person was the one Lu Ping saw at Li Xiuju's apprenticeship ceremony in the listening courtyard. She was the first person sitting below Enlightened Plum, but she claimed to be Enlightened Plum's second disciple. Lu Ping smiled. "Martial uncle, there's no need to make such a fuss. I reached the peak of the blood condensation realm 2 years ago. It's not surprising that I broke through to the core forging realm in 2 years. Martial uncle, you should introduce me to this fellow Taoist." Enlightened Master Liang Xianfeng only mentioned Lu Ping casually when he met him. He didn't think that Lu Ping could really reach such a realm. But now, not only did Lu Ping break through to the core forging realm in just 2 years, what shocked him even more was that Lu Ping's true essence fluctuation had obviously reached the peak of the first level of the core forging realm, and he could step into the second level at any time. Enlightened Master Liang Xianfeng originally wanted to put on the airs of an uncle master and warn Lu Ping not to damage his foundation because of greed, but he found that Lu Ping's aura was overflowing, and it was obvious that his foundation was extremely deep. Enlightened Master Liang Xianfeng was stunned when he heard Lu Ping's question. He looked back and didn't answer for a moment. It was the woman in the living room who walked out and smiled. "Isn't this the famous pill Master Lu Jiu? You even attended my 6th junior sister's apprenticeship ceremony. How can you not know me?" Lu Ping smiled and explained, "I was invited in a hurry. Although I've seen you before, I don't know how to address you." The woman bowed and said, "I'm Enlightened Master Mei's second disciple, Zhu Xianming. Do you know me now?" Lu Ping heard the word Xianming in Zhu Xuanming's name and turned to look at Enlightened Master Liang Xianfeng. He saw that Enlightened Master Liang was looking at the two of them in shock, so he returned the greeting. "Greetings, fellow Zhu." Liang Xianfeng finally came back to his senses. He waved his hand in amusement and said, all right. There's no need to be so polite. Both of you call me Uncle Master, so you're both my juniors. Just address each other as senior sister and junior brother. Lu Ping's intuition told him that this uncle master seemed to be hiding something. He was trying his best to hide a strange expression on his face, but he knew that this uncle master would never harm him. Anyway, the woman in front of him was definitely older and stronger than him. He wouldn't lose out if he called her senior sister out of respect for his uncle master. Thus, he said, "Greetings, senior sister Zhu." The reason why Lu Ping called her senior sister Zhu instead of senior sister Xinming was because disciples of the same sect could only address each other by name. Zhu Xinming seemed to be deep in thought at this moment, but she still nodded and said, "Greetings, junior brother Lu." What the two of them didn't see was that a strange smile flashed across enlightened Master Liang Xuanfeng's eyes from time to time. Chapter 294. Uncle Master. Who is this person? After exchanging greetings with Zhu Xinming, Lu Ping immediately asked Uncle Master Liang Xianfeng secretly, "Uncle Master, is this alchemy master Lu Ju with you too?" Just as enlightened Master Liang Xianfeng was thinking about how to answer Lu Ping's question, Zhu Xinming also secretly transmitted her voice to him. Enlightened Master Liang Xianfeng felt a headache coming on. He really wanted to make things clear and end things once and for all, but when he thought of the two terrifying cultivators, a chill ran down his spine and he almost shivered in fear of embarrassing himself in front of the two juniors. "So," he said, come. Since the two of you are here to help me, then let's discuss how to make the situation even more chaotic and take a share of the spoils from Sky Fisher Sword Sect and the Crystal Palace. In that case, the strange cultivator who caused the fight between Skyrind and the Crystal Palace cultivators was you, Uncle Master? Impressive indeed. There was a hint of excitement in the corner of Lu Ping's eyes. Clearly, perfected Liang Xuanfeng's move was very admirable to Lu Ping. Seeing Lu Ping's expression, Liang Xianfeng said proudly, "That's right." Lu Ping asked, "Martial uncle, what is there? Is it really as the outsiders say? Is it really a treasure trove or an ancient cultivator's ruin?" Perfected Liang Xianfeng pondered for a moment and said, "Have you heard of Laozu Zhongshuan?" Both Lu Ping and Zhu Xinming were shocked. Zhu Xinming said, "Is it the remnant of Fei Ling's sect who is known as the #1 weapon refinement grandmaster in the North Sea, Laozu Zhongshuan?" Lu Ping looked at Zhu Xinming in surprise. He did not expect her to be so familiar with the matters of the North Sea. That deepened Lu Ping's suspicion towards Perfected Plum. However, Lu Ping could tell that Perfected Liang Xianfeng had something to hide, so he did not ask further. Could this Taoist plum be a Tao companion that martial Uncle Liang Xianfeng found in the East Sea? A thought suddenly flashed across Lu Ping's mind, but he immediately rejected it. He had never heard that Uncle Master Liang Xianfeng had a Tao companion in the sect, so there was no need for Uncle Master Liang to hide it in front of him. Would Uncle Master Liang be embarrassed to let the sect know that he had a Tao companion outside? Lu Ping shook his head and tossed that ridiculous thought out of his mind. Perfected Liang Xianfeng continued, "Back then, when Fei Ling's sect was destroyed, Zhongshuan Laozu escaped and hid in the East Ocean. He appeared in the southern part of the East Ocean and refined Dharma weapons and Dharma treasures for many cultivators in the East Ocean, creating a great reputation for himself." Lu Ping was puzzled. Zhongshuan Laozu is so ostentatious. Isn't he afraid that the cultivators of the North Sea will come after him? Perfected Liang Xianfeng answered, "Zhongshuan Laozu originally wanted to gather the old subordinates of Fei Ling's sect, nurture talents, continue Fei Ling's sect's legacy, and wait for an opportunity to make a comeback and restore Fei Ling's sect's former prestige. Unfortunately, Zhongshuan Laozu is a top-notch genius in the cultivation world when it comes to refining Dharma weapons, but he's a complete layman when it comes to reorganizing a scattered sect and restoring morale. For decades, Zhongshuan Laozu accomplished nothing and even attracted the pursuit of various sects in the North Sea. Zhongshuan Laozu finally realized that he couldn't restore Fei Ling's sect with his own ability. Not only did the disheartened Zhongshuan Laozu not become depressed, but he became even crazier. He refined high-quality Dharma treasures in the East Ocean on a large scale, attracting a large number of cultivators from the East Ocean. However, he made a condition. Any cultivator or sect that wants him to refine Dharma weapons must send him a certain number of cultivators from various sects in the North Sea depending on the quality of the Dharma weapons and Dharma weapons. Lu Ping sucked in a breath of cold air and said, "That's a vicious move." Perfected Liang Xianfeng nodded and said, "For a while, a large number of cultivators from various sects in the North Sea went missing. By the time the sects in the North Sea understood the whole story, more than 30 core forging cultivators had been killed by East Ocean cultivators. However, East Ocean's cultivation world is far more powerful than North Sea's. The cultivators who attacked North Sea cultivators all did it secretly in their own names, so the sects in the North Sea had no way to investigate. In the end, the sects could only send a few Laozu to investigate openly and secretly in the East Ocean. Finally, they tracked down Zhongshuan Laozu. After a battle, Zhongshuan Laozu was ambushed and killed, but his hiding place in the East Ocean was not discovered by Laozu, and he has been hiding ever since. Lu Ping frowned and said, "Then how did the Crystal Palace discover Zhongshuan Laozu's secret abode in the East Ocean?" "It's the Overflowing Sea faction." "The Overflowing Sea gang?" Lu Ping's frown deepened. "How did they find clues about Zhongshuan Laozu's cave abode in the East Ocean in the North Sea?" Perfected Liang Xianfeng nodded and said with a serious expression, "The Overflowing Sea gang has been relying on the Crystal Palace to plunder all kinds of cultivation resources in the North Sea. Because of the Crystal Palace's influence, the higher-ups of the sects in the North Sea did not want to have a direct conflict with the Crystal Palace, so they just let the Overflowing Sea gang operate in the North Sea. I didn't expect them to find clues about Zhongshuan Laozu's secret abode in the East Ocean." Perfected Liang Xianfeng saw that Lu Ping was still confused, so he continued, "Speaking of clues, it has something to do with Failing Island that you've been to before." Lu Ping asked curiously, "Could it be that someone found clues in Failing Island and the Overflowing Sea gang found out?" "That's roughly it." Perfected Liang Xianfeng nodded and said, "The Overflowing Sea gang found out from the Jade Scrolls that they obtained from Failing Island that when Zhongshuan Laozu's cultivation base was not complete, he traveled in the East Ocean and built a secret abode in the East Ocean. This secret abode was in the area where Zhongshuan Laozu often appeared after he went into exile in the East Ocean. Therefore, this secret abode is most likely the hiding place that Zhongshuan Laozu built later on." After understanding the gist of the matter, Lu Ping smiled and flattered, "Martial uncle, you're so capable. You actually got the information from the Overflowing Sea gang and ruined the Crystal Palace's plan to monopolize the abode." Perfected Liang Xianfeng smiled proudly and said, "Although I, the Jinling sect, am not as brazen as the Crystal Palace in expanding our forces everywhere, we naturally have our own sources of information." Lu Ping pondered for a moment and said solemnly, "What kind of spiritual item did Martial Uncle obtain this time?" Lu Ping knew that the Sky-Splitting sect and the Crystal Palace were not the only two sects that had their eyes on Zhongshuan's abode. Now that the situation had become chaotic, the two sects definitely did not dare to take the risk of offending the entire East Ocean cultivators and monopolizing Zhongshuan's abode. However, the two sects would definitely take the majority of the loot. The rest of the loot would depend on their own abilities. Although Perfected Liang Xianfeng came prepared and even toyed with the two sects in the palm of his hand, that was only for a moment. With just the three of them here, it was impossible for them to compete with the vast number of East Ocean cultivators. They could only fish in troubled waters. When Perfected Liang Xianfeng heard this, his previously proud expression turned serious and he said in a serious tone, "In the past, Zhongshuan Laozu's name for crafting weapons was known throughout the world. He relied on 4 treasures. One was a crafting furnace, a high-tier treasure called the Chongxian furnace. Another was a high-tier earth-level spiritual fire of heaven and earth, the Ziyuan fire. Another was a low-tier earth-level spiritual water of heaven and earth used for quenching fire, the Xinyuan heavy water. The last one was a low-tier earth-level spiritual object of heaven and earth used to strengthen the power of fire, the Skywind leaf." Perfected Liang Xianfeng paused for a moment, then said with a somewhat feverish expression, "What I want this time is this Skywind leaf. With this Skywind leaf, I will be able to reach the 7th grade forging core and break through to the Dharma stage. I might even be able to enter the mid-Dharma stage, or even the late Dharma stage. Zhu Xinming and Lu Ping looked at each other and waited for perfected Liang Xianfeng to calm down before asking, Uncle Master, how can we find the Skywind leaf first when the cave opens? Perfected Liang Xianfeng smiled and said, Don't worry, I won't get involved if I'm not confident. I've learned a small magical power that is very effective in finding wind elemental spiritual objects. When the time comes, I'll definitely be able to find the Skywind leaf first. Of course, although Zhongshuan Laozu is only at the mid-Dharma stage, he has made countless weapons and collected many rare treasures. He might even have brought out part of the legacy of the failing sect. Otherwise, he wouldn't have planned to restore the failing sect back then. When the time comes, how much you can get will depend on your luck. What Lu Ping was most afraid of was that after the crowd of cultivators rushed into the cave, they would be blindly searching for it. That way, it would all depend on luck. If they found it, they might even be surrounded by other cultivators. Now that he heard that perfected Liang Xianfeng already had a plan, he heaved a sigh of relief. When he heard perfected Liang Xianfeng mention that Zhongshuan Laozu might have the legacy of the failing sect, he was tempted, but then he asked curiously, Uncle Master, since Zhongshuan Laozu's 4 treasures are all used to make weapons, then aren't they all together? If we find the Skywind leaf, then the other 3 treasures. Zhu Xuanming's eyes lit up. Liang Xianfeng pointed at Lu Ping and laughed, saying, I knew you would think that way. No wonder Master, yes, he recommended you to your master. Lu Ping was puzzled. Are the 4 treasures not together? Perfected Liang Xianfeng stopped laughing and said, Today, I'll broaden your horizons. Heaven and earth spiritual objects are nurtured by nature. The most important thing is the spirituality contained in them. It's a taboo for them to be too close to each other. It might be fine for a short period of time, but as time passes, the spirituality of the two will fight with each other and try to devour each other to strengthen themselves. The higher the grade of the spiritual objects, the further apart they will be from each other. Zhongshuan Laozu's 4 treasures contain 3 high-grade heaven and earth spiritual objects. It's impossible for them to be placed together. Lu Ping never knew such a situation existed. Fortunately, the indigo spiritual fire was in his storage ring, the psychic wood was with the peach tree spirit, and the soul-nurturing wood was almost placed with the peach tree spirit by Lu Ping. Fortunately, Lu Ping had another use for the soul-nurturing wood, so he didn't want to part with it. The nameless spiritual water was also in the 1000-bell millet, not too far from the peach tree spirit. Lu Ping stood quietly at the side. Liang Xianfeng and Zhu Xinming didn't know that this cultivator who had just broken through to the core forging stage had 4 heaven and earth spiritual objects. Chapter 295. A few days later, in the sea thousands of miles away from Silver Sword Island, a small white boat appeared in the sky. Liang Xianfeng, Zhu Xinming, and Lu Ping stood on the boat. Enlightened Master Liang Xianfeng waved his hand, and the boat disappeared into the air. Zhu Xinming looked fondly at Liang Xuanfeng's boat and said, Uncle Master, your boat is truly fast. It only takes the time to finish a cup of tea to get here from Silver Sword Island. Liang Xianfeng flaunted, That's true. Although this Cloudstream boat isn't my natal artifact, it has condensed 6 Dao talismans. It's considered one of the fastest flying artifacts in the cultivation world. With his divine sense, Lu Ping could clearly sense that there were hundreds of core forging realm cultivators and even more blood condensation realm cultivators hiding in the void around him. These cultivators had varying levels of cultivation, and their invisibility techniques were strong or weak. However, without exception, none of them seemed to be deliberately hiding their presence. Lu Ping said curiously, These cultivators are quite strange. Since no one is deliberately hiding their tracks, wouldn't it be better to meet face to face? In this way, wouldn't it be like burying one's head in the sand? Liang Xianfeng said, It's not to hide our tracks, but to hide our identities. Lu Ping suddenly understood. In the process of exploring ruins like this, everyone had to be on guard against sneak attacks. Therefore, the important thing was not whether you would be discovered when you made a move, but whether you would be recognized after the sneak attack. The former could be avoided at most, but when they met again in the future, no one would be able to recognize each other. The latter was a life and death feud that would not end until one of them died. At this moment, a rumbling sound came from the depths of the sea, and the seawater on the surface of the sea suddenly vibrated. Liang Xianfeng said seriously, "Attention, the Crystal Palace and Sky Rend have joined hands to open the Mansion of Profound Mystery. It's much earlier than I expected. It seems that it's right to come here 2 hours earlier today. Otherwise, we will have to eat the leftovers of others." When Lu Ping and Zhu Xinming heard perfected Liang Xuanfeng's words, they felt that this Uncle Master was being too careless. Through the past 2 days of interaction, Lu Ping had already realized that although this Uncle Master was cautious, he was an extremely easy person to get along with. "Hence," he said, "Uncle Master, you're being too careless. How can you rush back and forth for such a matter?" Liang Xianfeng glared at Lu Ping and pretended to be older. "Kid, what do you know? Do you know what your martial uncle is best at?" Before Lu Ping could ask, perfected Liang Xianfeng had already said ostentatiously, "Restrictions? All kinds of formations and restrictions in the ruins. Of course, it's not to set them up, but to dismantle them. According to my deduction of the Crystal Palace and Skyrend's speed in breaking the restrictions, the cave will open 2 hours after we arrive. 2 hours is enough for us to prepare. Why is it earlier now?" Zhu Ximing also found it funny and joked with Liang Xianfeng. "This is what I'm most worried about. It seems that the Crystal Palace and Skyrend have joined hands." Hearing this, Zhu Xuanming's face turned gloomy like perfected Liang Xianfeng. Lu Ping thought for a while and said, "Martial Uncle also said that the Crystal Palace has been collecting information about Fei Ling, sect through the overflowing ocean gang. Perhaps the Crystal Palace happened to have some jade slips that recorded the restrictions that Laozu had set up in the cave." Reverend Liang Xianfeng did not answer, but his complexion was much better. If the Crystal Palace and the Sky Fisher Sword Sect had truly joined forces to take over the profound abode, the Crystal Palace would naturally have nothing to fear as they were the only major force in the Eastern Sea. The Sky Fisher Sword Sect would not be able to withstand the denunciations of the Eastern Sea cultivators. Even the other three major sects would be wary of the alliance between the Crystal Palace and the Sky Fisher Sword Sect. Suddenly, two huge whirlpools formed on the surface of the sea. Perfected Liang Xuanfeng's face lit up. The two sects really did not join hands. "Let's go. We're already one step behind them." Enlightened Master Liang Xianfeng steered the flowing cloud warship toward one of the whirlpools and plunged into the sea. Lu Ping's divine sense told him that the hundreds of cultivators had split into two groups and were rushing toward the two whirlpools. Liang Xianfeng had the flowing cloud boat in his hand, and he cultivated a wind-attributed cultivation technique. So in the blink of an eye, he was already in front of the group. At this moment, the three of them suddenly became the target of everyone. Immediately, several attacks were launched at the flowing cloud boat, intending to slow down the three of them. Lu Ping and Zhu Xinming guarded the two sides while perfected Liang Xianfeng controlled the flying boat. Under the speed of lightning, the distance between them and the cultivators widened. Lu Ping stood on the port side of the flowing cloud boat. Lu Ping couldn't help but feel a little excited when a flying sword shot towards him. This was the first time he made a move since advancing to the core forging realm. Moreover, he was facing a chaotic battle or even a siege by perfected cultivators. Lu Ping formed a sword art, and the golden scale sword shot out from Lu Ping's right fingertip. 96 sword shadows struck the flying sword and sent it swaying towards the sea. A painful roar came from the void. Clearly, Lu Ping's sword had injured the opponent's magic artifact. On the other side, Zhu Xinming was actually holding a peeper in her hand. Amidst the noise, the attacks flying towards the starboard side were shaken and shattered by the void. Although perfected Liang Xianfeng had been controlling the flowing cloud boat with all his strength, he was secretly preparing to make a move in case he encountered an expert. He wasn't too worried about Zhu Xinming. After all, Zhu Xuanming's cultivation was at the mid-stage of the core forging realm. However, Lu Ping's performance really surprised perfected Liang Xianfeng. Perfected Liang Xianfeng originally thought that Lu Ping would not be able to fight the enemy as he had just advanced to the core forging realm and was a pill refiner. However, perfected Liang Xianfeng sensed that the cultivator whose magic artifact was damaged by Lu Ping's attack was a cultivator with the same cultivation level as Lu Ping. Although Lu Ping had the advantage of a magic artifact, It was difficult for him to find a match among cultivators of the same cultivation level with just one attack. Perfected Liang Xianfeng narrowed his eyes when he saw the golden scale sword in Lu Ping's hand. He chuckled and said, "So that big fish, Jinli, died in your hands?" Lu Ping was shocked, but he immediately reacted and said with a smile, "That's right. That guy was besieged and was on his last breath when he escaped. I took advantage of him." Perfected Liang Xianfeng said with a smirk, "That monster from Golden Wyrm Island is already furious. He was going to the East Sea to start a massacre. Don't let him see the sword in your hand." Lu Ping split his sword into 3 true essence 1 chi swords made of psychic sword rays and blocked the 3 magic artifacts that were flying over. He said, "Uncle Master, what do you think of this technique?" The 3 true essence 1 chi swords were formed by 81 psychic sword rays each. Perfected Liang Xianfeng nodded as he watched, but he said, "It's best not to use this technique in front of him." The spirit chi in the air changed and a giant claw tore through the air as if it wanted to grab the flowing cloud boat completely. Perfected Liang Xianfeng wanted to see how far Lu Ping could go, so he only warned, "Be careful, it's a demonic cultivator." Lu Ping pointed at the sword with one hand and the seawater with the other and shouted, "Rise!" A 90-foot-long psychic sword dragon with a single horn became even more lively after being covered by the seawater. After the giant claw was entangled by the sword dragon, it tore at its head and bit at its body. Although the giant claw tore off many of its sword scales, a mournful wail came from the void after a while. The giant claw was already crushed by the sword dragon. The sword dragon was also covered in wounds, but it was still swaggering in the sky. After Lu Ping destroyed the giant claw, no cultivators on the port side came to attack for a while. Perfected Liang Xianfeng was shocked. The demonic cultivator's cultivation was at the 3rd stage core forging realm, but Lu Ping easily broke his technique. "Oomph!" A cold snort came from the void. "Since you're so powerful, maybe the old man will have to use his divine sense." After the cold snort, Lu Ping felt a strange attack coming from the void towards Lu Ping's divine sense. Divine sense attack. Lu Ping smiled slightly. Although he didn't know any secret techniques to attack with divine sense, his divine sense was no weaker than a mid-stage core forging realm cultivator. This kind of attack was nothing in Lu Ping's eyes. Lu Ping searched with his divine sense. After the other party's attack stabbed into Lu Ping's divine sense, Lu Ping only felt a slight numbness in his divine sense. The other party's attack was bounced back by Lu Ping. Liang Xianfeng sneered and said, "Didn't you already make your move? You didn't forget to remind me after the attack. What a good move." Liang Xianfeng deliberately said that he reminded him after the attack. Naturally, he wanted to expose the sneak attack. The other party snorted and no longer answered. A cloud of fire swept towards the flowing cloud boat. Lu Ping's face froze. This was obviously a mid-stage core forging realm master. Although there were many people who tried to stop Lu Ping during the battle, his opponents were all early-stage core forging realm cultivators. There were only 3 of them. This was a hidden rule in the East China Sea's cultivation world. Now, a mid-stage core forging realm cultivator not only tried to interfere but also launched a sneak attack. Liang Xianfeng pointed this out to warn the other party. The other party broke the rule first. With Liang Xianfeng, an 8th-stage core forging realm master behind him, Lu Ping had nothing to worry about. Lu Ping's eyes were filled with excitement to be able to fight with a mid-stage core forging realm master. Lu Ping had a great advantage when fighting with a fire attribute cultivator on the sea. Lu Ping immediately sheathed the golden scale sword and clasped his hands together. The water vapor in a radius of a few miles immediately gathered above Lu Ping's head. Before the fiery clouds could reach him, a huge, dark cloud had already formed above them. The enemy cultivator obviously sensed something was amiss and sped up his casting speed. Lu Ping smirked and shouted, "Quick! Art of traveling through clouds and summoning rain." The torrential rain poured down and enveloped a huge fiery cloud. Sizzling sounds could be heard from the fiery cloud. Occasionally, there would be explosive sounds. The fiery cloud gradually turned into a gray cloud that was about to be extinguished. The cultivator who cast the fire cloud did his best to control the cloud of fire to dodge, but the dark cloud in the sky became thicker and thicker. No matter how the cloud of fire moved, it couldn't escape the control of Lu Ping's art of traveling through clouds and summoning rain. The sea was getting closer and closer. Seeing that the boat was about to plunge into the sea, Liang Xianfeng laughed loudly. At this time, someone shouted in the sky again, "Your Excellency is too arrogant. Eat my attack." Chapter 296. The roar wasn't aimed at Lu Ping, but the laughing enlightened Master Liang Xianfeng. And as soon as the roaring man attacked, Lu Ping knew he couldn't handle a battle of this level. A late-stage core forging perfected master. A strange chill hit them in the face, and the surface of the sea below the flowing cloud ship immediately turned into ice. At the same time, the flowing cloud ship's body was also covered in a dense layer of frost. The flowing cloud ship's speed instantly dropped. Suddenly, Lu Ping heard a buzzing sound in his head. The dark clouds that were controlled by his art of moving clouds and summoning rain suddenly broke free from his control. The entire dark cloud shrouded the sky above the flowing cloud skiff, and hail the size of goose eggs rained down on the 3 people on the skiff. At the same time, the entire dark cloud suddenly collapsed towards the center, and the surrounding clouds quickly shrunk towards the center of the collapse. When the entire dark cloud disappeared, a huge ice cone that was dozens of feet long hovered above the skiff and smashed down towards the skiff. Perfected Liang Xianfeng stopped laughing, and his expression turned solemn. Unknowingly, a long sword had already flown towards the ice all. However, the 3-foot-long flying sword seemed extremely tiny in front of the ice all that was hundreds of feet long. Lu Ping looked at the flying sword and sighed. Lu Ping knew that perfected Liang Xuanfeng's natal artifact wasn't a flying sword, and this flying sword was obviously a magical artifact. Moreover, the quality of this flying sword was higher than the golden scale sword. Split! Perfected Liang Xianfeng shouted, and the flying sword immediately split into 18 swords in the sky. As he performed a series of dazzling sword techniques, each of the 18 flying swords in the sky displayed a set of sword techniques. Qingfeng sword, cold wind sword, zephyr sword, howling wind sword, whirlwind sword, stormwind sword. Lu Ping was dumbfounded. This was Xianling sect's famous Merry 18 swords. Furthermore, each of perfected Liang Xuanfeng's 18 swords were made up of 72 spiritual sword flashes. Altogether, there were a total of 1,296 spiritual sword flashes, the highest realm of spiritual sword flashes. The ice spikes in the sky immediately crumbled under the combined attack of the 18 swords. Reverend Liang Xianfeng pointed his left hand downwards, and the 18 swords split into 2. 9 of them continued to swim in the sky, preventing the other cultivators from launching another sneak attack. The other 8 swords formed a huge wind drill and broke a hole in the ice on the surface of the sea. The flowing cloud boat followed closely behind and disappeared into the sea. The moment the drifting cloud boat entered the sea, Lu Ping formed 9 seals in a row. "Kid, you have quite a few tricks up your sleeve." Perfected Liang Xianfeng smiled. Lu Ping curled his lips and said, "How can I compare to Uncle Master? You've even mastered Xianling sect's signature sword technique to such a high level. I'm afraid Xianling sect will have to take the blame for you, martial uncle." Perfected Liang Xianfeng didn't think much of it. "Only Xianling sect. I don't care if other sects want to take the blame." Lu Ping chuckled. "Hee, you're a genius, martial uncle. Of course you have high standards. But Uncle Master, can you teach me this sword technique?" "Why? You want Xianling sect to take the blame too?" asked perfected Liang Xianfeng with a faint smile. "Of course I won't miss the chance." Lu Ping smiled. At Lu Ping's level of swordsmanship, it was extremely difficult to make any progress. Only by studying the sword techniques of hundreds of schools, absorbing their essence and making up for their weaknesses, would one be able to master swordsmanship. Perfected Liang Xianfeng knew what Lu Ping was thinking, so he promised to teach him the 18 Merry swords after they came out of Zhongxian's cave. Following closely behind Lu Ping's group, The other core forging masters also rushed into the whirlpool. But the moment the two Dharma treasures entered the water, they felt as if the water around them had come alive. Dozens of undercurrents grabbed the two Dharma treasures like dozens of arms. By the time the Dharma treasures broke free, they were already a step behind Lu Ping's group and were overtaken by the people behind them. At the bottom of the sea, a huge light shield covered a mysterious cave abode. This was where Zhongxian Laozu's cave abode was located. From afar, there were two huge holes in the shield, one in the north and one in the south. Obviously, the holes were left by Skyrind and the Crystal Palace's attacks. When the three of them got closer, perfected Liang Xianfeng went up to take a look and said, "We're not very lucky. This is the shield of the Crystal Palace." At this moment, the three of them did not have the time to lament about who they would encounter. Although the Crystal Palace cultivators had broken the barrier here, they naturally would not allow the cultivators behind them to take the shortcut. They had already resealed the broken barrier. Of course, in a hurry, the seal was far inferior to Zhongxian Laozu's shield. Perfected Liang Xianfeng changed 3 sets of hand seals in a row. When the third set of hand seals was cast, the light of the sealed shield dimmed. Reverend Liang Xuanfeng's face lit up. He performed another hand seal, and the seal immediately dissipated. The three of them hastily walked in. By then, the cultivators behind them had already caught up. Reverend Liang Xianfeng snickered and performed the third set of hand seals. This time, however, he performed it in reverse. The seal from before appeared on the barrier once more, sealing it up. As soon as the three of them entered, they felt a strong spiritual force. The concentration of spiritual qi is more than one medium spiritual vein, right? Zhu Xinming said in surprise. It seems that Zhongxian Laozu's management was quite successful. Perfected Liang Xianfeng said. Of course. After all, Zhongxian Laozu planned to restore the sect back then. Without some foundation, how would he dare to make such a bold statement? Ignoring the cultivators' curses, the three of them hurriedly disappeared into the shield. After walking for a while, Perfected Liang Xianfeng suddenly stopped and said, "No, the Crystal Palace is obviously going for the refinery room of Zhongxian's cave abode. Zhongxian Laozu's refinery furnace and the purple fire must be in the refinery room, so the sky wind leaf must not be in the same place as the purple fire. Moreover, the Crystal Palace isn't that stupid. They have the advantage in numbers, so they must have set up an ambush ahead to buy time for our sect to fight for the treasure. We need to open another path." Lu Ping and Zhu Xinming nodded in agreement. Zhu Xinming said, "Uncle Master, don't you have the magical power to detect the location of the sky wind leaf? You can check it out now." Liang Xianfeng shook his head and said, "There are many restrictions here. My magical power will only be effective within a certain range. We are only at the periphery of the cave abode. My magical power will only be effective inside the cave abode. Let's choose a random path and try our luck. We are not too late, so there will definitely be some gains. It just depends on the size." Lu Ping reached out and grabbed. Debao, who was sleeping in the spiritual beast bag, suddenly felt the skin on his neck tighten. When he opened his eyes, he was already in a strange place. The two of them looked at the fat rat in Lu Ping's hand in shock. Lu Ping didn't explain and directly ordered Debao, "Choose a path for us." Debao, who was already at the 5th layer of the blood condensation realm, lowered his head and ran towards the path opened by the Crystal Palace. Lu Ping grabbed his beard and scolded, "Idiot, not this one." Debao squeaked a few times in futile protest. Only then did he sniff the ground and walk towards a corridor on the left. Liang Xianfeng chuckled and followed behind Lu Ping. Zhu Xinming looked at Lu Ping in surprise and followed behind as well. Debao had just taken a step towards the entrance of the corridor when he seemed to have collided with an invisible wall, causing him to squeak in pain. Perfected Liang Xianfeng went forward and struck a few hand seals, causing ripples to appear at the entrance of the corridor before it calmed down again. Liang Xianfeng frowned and said, "These restrictions are a little troublesome. It's not hard to break, but it will take a lot of time. I'm afraid the people behind will catch up." Zhu Ximing pondered and said, "Should we use spells to attack it or choose another path?" Liang Xianfeng shook his head and said, "The restrictions here are connected to the entire cave abode's formation. If we use force to break it, we will probably trigger a response from the entire formation. It will be even more difficult to break it. The other paths will be the same. For a moment, the three of them seemed to be at a loss. Lu Ping thought for a while and looked at the invisible barrier at the corridor. A strange light actually appeared in his eyes. Lu Ping's actions naturally could not be hidden from Liang Xianfeng. A trace of surprise flashed in his eyes, but he did not disturb Lu Ping. Instead, he quietly watched Lu Ping's next step. Zhu Ximing looked at Lu Ping. Which uncle master was this person's disciple? She felt that she could not see through this person anymore. Spiritual clarity eyes. This was the first stage of the minor technique, the three pure one's true pupils. Using the method Hu Lily taught him, Lu Ping used half of the clear spirit water given to him by the Dark Mountain Gang master, Qiao Jingyin, to cleanse his eyes. It took him half a year to complete the first stage of the three pure one's true pupils. As for the remaining half of the clear spirit water, Lu Ping naturally left it to Hu Lily. Right now, Lu Ping's spiritual clarity eyes was still very shallow. He could see through some ordinary illusionary formations and bewildering formations, but he was still far from being able to see through these complicated formations. However, Lu Ping soon discovered that he was extremely familiar with the complex array formations and restrictions. Lu Ping turned around and looked at the two people behind him with a strange expression. Then, he stretched out his hand and made a few strange hand seals. As Lu Ping poured out a large amount of true essence, the ripples of the restrictions in front of them reappeared in front of the three of them. Then, with a shake, it was broken. The three of them quickly passed through the broken light curtain. Lu Ping turned around and made a few more hand seals. The previous ripples of the restrictions reappeared and sealed the corridor again. Looking at the two people's surprised eyes, Lu Ping shrugged and said, "I have also been to Failing Island. These restrictions are recorded in the inheritance jade slips that I obtained." As soon as the three of them left through the corridor, a few cultivators caught up from behind. However, Liang Xianfeng and the other two people were nowhere to be seen. The leading cultivator said doubtfully, "Strange, where did the three people in front go? Are they stupid enough to go to the Crystal Palace's ambush?" Chapter 297. As the three of them moved forward, they encountered several restrictions and obstacles along the way. After Lu Ping pondered for a moment, he made a few hand seals in a row, and the restrictions immediately disappeared. After the three of them passed, Lu Ping made a few more hand seals, and the dissipated restrictions were restored again. Spiritual Master Liang Xianfeng looked at the hand seals that Lu Ping made previously, which were rather jerky and difficult. Obviously, it was also Lu Ping's first time using it. As they encountered more and more restrictions, Lu Ping became more and more skilled. The restrictions and obstacles they encountered were different, and Lu Ping also used different hand seals to break them. Spiritual Master Liang Xianfeng finally couldn't help but ask, "Kid, how many failing sect inheritance jade slips about restrictions did you get?" Along the way, we encountered a total of 11 restrictions, and you used 5 different sets of hand seals. Did you take away all the failing sect inheritance jade slips about restrictions? Lu Ping was alarmed and said with a smile, "Of course not. Failing sect was known as the number 1 sect in the North Sea back then, and its inheritance of restrictions and spells are as vast as the sea. I only got 8 or 9 sets, and it's obvious that we're lucky this way. I know these restrictions, so it's easy for me to break them." Spiritual Master Liang Xianfeng snorted with dissatisfaction. He had been studying all kinds of restrictions and spells all his life, and originally wanted to show off the elegance of a senior expert in front of these 2 junior disciples. However, he didn't expect that his martial nephew, Lu Ping, would steal the limelight, so he was naturally very dissatisfied. Along the way, there were some scattered spiritual materials that Debao also volunteered to bring over. However, most of them were middle-grade and high-grade spiritual materials, and the 3 of them didn't care about them. However, Debao was never tired of it. Lu Ping hung a storage bag under his neck and let him play around the 3 of them. As the last light curtain was broken by Lu Ping, the sound of spell explosions rang out. The 3 hurriedly cast out their mystic treasures and spells to protect themselves. Spiritual Master Liang Xianfeng saw that apart from the golden scale sword, Lu Ping was actually holding an ordinary top-grade magic treasure, the golden light mirror, in front of him. He frowned and said, "Why don't you have a decent magic treasure? Although this golden light mirror has some special effects, it doesn't match with your cultivation method." Lu Ping smiled. Disciple's magic treasure was broken by spiritual master Jin Li a few days ago, so this is just to make up the numbers. I've been focusing on cultivation these days, so I didn't have the time to buy it. This time I'm here to ask Martial Uncle if there's a chance to pick a magic treasure for me. Zhu Ximing snickered and said, "Although Zhongshuan Laozu is a master of artificing, he can't have magical treasures all over the place. This trip to Zhongshuan's cave might be peaceful at the moment, but once we enter the cave, I'm afraid there will be a storm of blood. Junior brother, you are too optimistic." Lu Ping chuckled and did not reply. When the three of them looked out of the restriction, they realized that they had already reached the interior of the cave. Hidden by the trees, there were pavilions and towers that looked like a paradise. In the distance, there were two rumbling sounds of spells. It was obvious that the Water Crystal Palace and the Heaven Fisher Sword sect, who had arrived first, were attacking the restriction formations of some of the doors. Spiritual Master Liang Xianfeng waved his hands and dozens of rays of light scattered in all directions inside the cave residence. At the same time, Spiritual Master Liang Xianfeng closed his eyes as if he was sensing something. Lu Ping and Zhu Ximing knew that Spiritual Master Liang Xianfeng was using a minor supernatural power to sense the location of the heavenly wind leaf. Lu Ping and Zhu Ximing stood on his left and right sides to protect him. Lu Ping took a step back intentionally and got out of the range of Spiritual Master Liang Xuanfeng's minor supernatural power. After a while, Spiritual Master Liang Xianfeng opened his eyes with a serious expression. Looking at Lu Ping and Zhu Xuanming's questioning gaze, Spiritual Master Liang Xianfeng smiled bitterly and said, "We're not very lucky. We're going in the wrong direction. The location of the heavenly wind leaf is right behind the Crystal Palace and Skyrend. If we want to get the heavenly wind leaf, we have to pass through the middle of the two sections." Zhu Xinming was stunned. Lu Ping smiled and said, "It's already not bad. At least the place that the two sects are attacking doesn't have the heavenly wind leaf, right?" Spiritual Master Liang Xianfeng nodded and smiled bitterly. "That's a blessing in disguise. If the heavenly wind leaf is in the building that the two sects are attacking, I'm afraid we'll have to start a war with the two sects if we want to get it." The three of them hid their identities and passed through the middle of the two sections. Naturally, they could not hide from the cultivators of the two sections. Skyrend's attack on the formation slowed down and then ignored Spiritual Master Liang Xianfeng and the other two. Obviously, the speed at which the three of them entered the cave abode was far beyond their expectations. However, the cave abode was obviously not something that the two sects could take down. It was already good enough that the two sects could enter the cave abode first and get the biggest share of it. After that, the cultivators of East Ocean would flood in. That was why Spiritual Master Liang Xianfeng and the other two dared to take the risk and bet that the two sects would not waste time to stop them. The Heavenly Splitting Sword sect ignored their actions. Even if the three of them had some tricks up their sleeves, they would not be able to break through the formation and obtain the treasures of the cave abode as quickly as the Heavenly Splitting Sword sect. The Heavenly Splitting Sword sect was currently attacking the storage room of Old Ancestor Deep Profundity. Old Ancestor Deep Profundity had spent his entire life forging artifacts, so his collection was definitely abundant. Unfortunately, the artifact refiners on the other side had already been taken by Water Crystal Palace. When Spiritual Master Liang Xianfeng and the other two saw that Skyrend was indifferent to their appearance, they had some hope. Then, they saw a late-stage core forging realm cultivator, who had reached the 5th stage core forging realm, step out from the crowd and slowly followed behind Lu Ping and the other two. "Damn it, this Crystal Palace is too overbearing." Spiritual Master Liang Xianfeng cursed. Zhu Ximing asked, "This person followed behind us without threatening us or stopping us. What is the Crystal Palace trying to do?" "Surveillance." Spiritual Master Liang Xianfeng said unwillingly, "The cultivators of the Crystal Palace are busy breaking the restriction of the refining room and have no time to care about us. They are also afraid that we have some tricks up our sleeves and will get the benefits first, so they sent someone to spy on us. Once we find the treasure, the the cultivators of the Crystal Palace will rush over and demand the treasure. At that time, we will be outnumbered and have no choice but to give in. Zhu Xinming said with hatred. Isn't he afraid that we will kill him? Spiritual Master Liang Xianfeng glanced at him and said, The Crystal Palace is the overlord of the East Sea. If we kill a cultivator of the Crystal Palace, we will definitely be hunted by the Crystal Palace. The Crystal Palace is sure that we won't dare to kill them. Moreover, this person is keeping a distance from us to prevent us from attacking him. With his cultivation, even if the three of us go all out, we may not be able to kill him in a short time. When the other cultivators of the Crystal Palace arrive, we will still be dead. The three of them had dark expressions on their faces. Seeing this, the Water Crystal Palace cultivator behind them revealed a mocking smile. Trying to pick up the scraps of the Water Crystal Palace? Other than the four great sects of the East Sea, who else would have the guts to do so? Let's see if I can use those restrictions. Spiritual Master Liang Xianfeng and the other two's eyes lit up when they heard Lu Ping's words. They suddenly remembered that along the way, Lu Ping had used several restrictions that were obviously from the failing sect. The pavilion where Tianfeng Yi was located was against a mountain wall, and the interior of the building was deep inside the mountain. Lu Ping and the others pretended to fiddle in front of the pavilion for a long time before they finally broke the light curtain of the formation at the entrance. Seeing that the three of them broke the formation so easily, the cultivators of the Crystal Palace thought that there would be nothing good inside. However, following the usual style of the Crystal Palace, the cultivators still followed them in. Not long after the cultivators of the Crystal Palace walked in, the broken restriction shield at the entrance of the pavilion was strangely restored. Lu Ping originally wanted to restore the restriction shield immediately after the three of them entered to block the cultivators of the Crystal Palace outside. However, Spiritual Master Liang Xianfeng stopped him and said, If you block him outside, he will be even more suspicious. Maybe when we are ready to go out, the cultivators of the Crystal Palace will already be blocking us at the entrance. Lu Ping looked at Spiritual Master Liang Xuanfeng's cold eyes and knew that he had the intention to kill. Without saying anything, he changed to a set of hand seals and cast them on the restrictions on the left and right side. Spiritual Master Liang Xianfeng seemed to have sensed something and smiled without saying anything. However, he was getting more and more surprised by his disciple nephew's performance. After entering the pavilion, Spiritual Master Liang Xianfeng seemed to have confirmed the location of Tianfeng Yi. After Lu Ping broke a few restrictions in succession, he could not help but quicken his pace and walked directly into the mountain behind the pavilion. Lu Ping and Zhu Xinming looked at each other and hurriedly chased after him. Turning around the attic, he saw a closet dug out from the stone wall in the belly of the mountain. A blue restriction protected the closet, and Liang Xianfeng was standing in front of the closet. Behind the restriction, there was a palm-sized gray object that looked like a withered leaf placed in an open jade box. Tianfeng Yi. The cultivators of the Crystal Palace turned around the pavilion and saw the object in the closet and shouted in surprise behind the three of them. Hee, you actually know what this is? Spiritual Master Liang Xianfeng turned around with a murderous aura around him. Lu Ping and Zhu Xinming were also on guard, ready to attack. The cultivator of the Crystal Palace was not afraid at all under the suppression of Spiritual Master Liang Xuanfeng's late-stage core forging cultivation. He said coldly, The Crystal Palace wants this Tianfeng Yi. I advise you not to cause trouble. The disciples of the Crystal Palace behind me will be here soon. When Spiritual Master Liang Xianfeng saw that the cultivator of the Crystal Palace was about to tear a talisman, Spiritual Master Liang Xianfeng slashed with his hand, and an invisible wind wheel slashed towards the cultivator of the Crystal Palace. The cultivator of the Crystal Palace could not care less about the talisman in his hand. With a step, a crystal wall rose in front of him and was immediately smashed by the wind wheel. When Lu Ping looked up, he saw that the cultivator of the Crystal Palace had blood flowing out of his mouth and nose. At the same time, the talisman in his hand was torn. Under the scornful gaze of the cultivator of the Crystal Palace, a ray of light flew out. Lu Ping and Zhu Xinming joined forces to attack from the left and right. The golden scale sword released a sword chi of true essence. Zhu Xuanming's pipa played a few notes and several invisible sound blades flew towards the cultivator of the Crystal Palace. The cultivator of the Crystal Palace took out a crystal plate with the word "Protect" on it. A crystal light curtain was cast to protect him in the middle. Then, he used a flying axe to block Zhu Xuanming's sound blades. He ignored Lu Ping's sword chi and retreated into the attic. However, the cultivator of the Crystal Palace still underestimated the first-stage core forging cultivator behind him. The cultivator of the Crystal Palace who was retreating felt a great force coming from the light curtain, pushing him back a few steps. Although the light curtain was not broken, the cultivator of the Crystal Palace spat out a mouthful of blood again. However, the eyes of the Water Crystal Palace cultivator still revealed a sinister smile, because as long as he retreated from the belly of the mountain, it would only take a moment for him to escape from the pavilion and meet up with the Water Crystal Palace cultivators who had come to reinforce him. At that time, Chapter 298. As soon as the Crystal Palace cultivator retreated from the mountain, his gloomy smile froze on his face. At the top of the stairs of the pavilion, a restriction had been condensed again. The escape light that he had released after tearing the talisman was now circling in front of the light curtain condensed by the restriction. The cultivator roared furiously, and the flying axe in his hand smashed towards the barrier of light. With a boom, the entire barrier of light trembled. Immediately after that, the magic arrays and restrictions within the pavilion also shook. However, the barrier of light did not break. The Crystal Palace cultivator's face changed. Liang Xianfeng and the other two had already attacked again. Finish it quickly. Don't hold back. Liang Xianfeng sent another invisible wind wheel toward the Crystal Palace cultivator. A few invisible strings flew out of Zhu Xuanming's pipa. Lu Ping changed his sword momentum. The great river flows east with an indomitable momentum blocked the space where the Crystal Palace cultivator could dodge. He could only choose to fight the attacks of the three head-on. In the desperate eyes of the Crystal Palace cultivator, Liang Xuanfeng's windwheel had already cut his defensive light curtain. The crystal jade pendant above his head wailed and fell down. His other magic weapon was tightly entangled by Lu Ping's golden scale sword. A tiny string flashed in the air, and the head of the Crystal Palace cultivator flew up. A golden core with 5 golden patterns suddenly flew out of the headless body. Just as Liang Xianfeng was about to capture it, the golden core hit the light curtain fiercely. This time, the light curtain finally collapsed. The escape light that had been blocked before disappeared again. The golden core also shattered and turned into a strong wave of spiritual power that rushed in all directions. The three of them bore the brunt of the attack. Liang Xianfeng did not care. The violent air wave was constantly weakened, blocked, and divided in front of Liang Xianfeng. Finally, it turned into a breeze. With Liang Xuanfeng's help, it was much easier for Zhu Xianming and Lu Ping to resist the impact of the airwave. The three of them exchanged glances. Enlightened Master Liang Xianfeng turned around and returned to the side of the mountain, ready to break the seals on the cupboard. Lu Ping wanted to follow, but he didn't want to expose his trump card too much. Zhu Xianming, on the other hand, started searching around the pavilion for other valuable items. Lu Ping walked to the next light barrier, only to find that it had already been destroyed by the shockwave when the golden core of the Crystal Palace cultivator was destroyed. The golden light was nowhere to be seen. Lu Ping's heart sank, and he hurriedly ran toward the entrance of the pavilion. From afar, he saw the golden escape light like a headless fly, bumping around in front of the last layer of the light curtain at the entrance of the pavilion. Lu Ping casually extinguished the escape light and heard a roar from the light curtain outside the pavilion. Then, the restriction of the entire pavilion shook, as if it was going to be destroyed in the next moment. Lu Ping's face changed, and he made a few hand seals. The light curtain at the entrance of the pavilion flickered, and the situation outside the pavilion appeared in front of Lu Ping. Lu Ping looked back and saw that Liang Xianfeng and Zhu Xianming had heard the noise and rushed over. He quickly said in a deep voice, "The cultivators outside have broken into the inner layer of the cave mansion. Now there are cultivators everywhere outside the pavilion. Many of them have already started fighting. Now, a group of cultivators is outside the pavilion attacking the defense array. Uncle Master, Did you get the Skywind leaf? When Liang Xianfeng heard that it wasn't the cultivators from the Crystal Palace, he immediately relaxed. When he heard Lu Ping's question, his face immediately lit up and he nodded. Yes, I did. Later, we'll take advantage of the chaos when the cultivators come in and break out of the encirclement. If we accidentally get separated, then we'll meet up at the inn on Silver Sword Island in 3 days. Be careful and stay alive. Liang Xuanfeng's last sentence was actually for Lu Ping. Although Lu Ping's strength had already impressed the two of them, his cultivation was still the lowest among the three of them. At this moment, several more attacks hit the light curtain, causing it to shake and shatter. Outside the pavilion, more than 10 core forging cultivators rushed in, followed by many blood condensation cultivators. Zhu Xinming threw a magic tool over. Lu Ping caught it and saw that it was the magic tool the cultivators from the Crystal Palace used to block the three's attacks. The crystal jade token with the word guard written on it. Zhu Xinming said, "This is the defensive magic tool of that person. His flying axe has already been destroyed, and you happen to have no defensive magic tool. Use this magic tool for now." Lu Ping thanked her and didn't ask what else Zhu Xinming had gained in the pavilion. The cultivators that rushed into the pavilion searched everywhere. Lu Ping used the remnants of the pavilion's restrictions to isolate the three's auras. While the others were busy searching for treasures, the three of them rushed out of the pavilion together. No, these three have already entered. They weren't among the people that rushed in just now. Just as Lu Ping and the others were about to rush out of the pavilion, one of the cultivators finally noticed something was wrong and shouted, "Damn it! Why did I say there was nothing in the pavilion? It turns out that the three of them got it first. Kill them." It formed an invisible light curtain, trapping the cultivator inside the array formation. Lu Ping pulled up several light curtains in front of him in an attempt to block the flying needle. However, these light curtains did not have the slightest effect in front of the flying needle. A flying needle-type magic weapon. Lu Ping secretly cursed his bad luck. He actually encountered such a strange magic weapon. It was simply unavoidable. The golden scale sword swept out, and the flying needle moved slightly to avoid it. In any case, the golden scale sword was not as flexible as the flying needle. Although the cultivator was trapped in the array formation restriction of the Immortal's Cave by Lu Ping, the flying needle was still under his control. It relentlessly chased after Lu Ping. Lu Ping gave a cold snort. Lu Ping threw a black pill with a hint of gold towards the flying needle. After the pill flew out, Lu Ping's hand seal changed. Suddenly, it burst into a poisonous flood dragon. It shook its head and wagged its tail as it pounced towards the flying needle. War Pill, Myriad Poison War Pill. This was a unique war pill that Lu Ping had refined using the Dark Prison Poison Flame in his own intermediate-grade pill furnace. He had refined it according to the Myriad Poison Pills pill recipe. More importantly, Lu Ping had added Myriad Poison Serum to dozens of 1,000-year and 500-year-old spirit grasses. Under the influence of Lu Ping's master-level alchemy technique, he had refined 2 Myriad Poison War Pills. Originally, Lu Ping had refined these war pills on a whim. He did not expect that it would actually come in handy. After the flying needle pierced the body of the poisonous flood dragon, a chi-chi sound came out. The originally sarcastic expression of the cultivator trapped in the array formation by Lu Ping was suddenly replaced by a ferocious expression. A painful howl sounded out. The spiritual sense and true essence attached to the flying needle were quickly corroded. The flying needle pierced through the poisonous flood dragon and was about to fly towards Lu Ping. But unexpectedly, the poisonous flood dragon had already turned around in midair. The poisonous flood dragon opened its mouth and spat out a mouthful of venom at the poisonous needle that had just flown out of its body. The poisonous flood dragon's black body turned transparent as it spat out the venom. However, the flying needle suffered another heavy blow, and the cultivator in the array formation once again cried out in pain. Lu Ping took advantage of the greatly weakened spiritual sense and true essence of the cultivator on the flying needle to slash down with the golden scale sword. With a zhung sound, the flying needle was shattered into several pieces by the golden scale sword. A trace of blood flowed out from the corner of the cultivator's mouth. At the same time, his head slightly tilted back. It was obvious that his spiritual sense and true essence had suffered heavy damage. Although flying needle-type magic treasures were the most difficult to defend against and defensive magic techniques were difficult to block, they were extremely fragile. When used against an enemy, they relied on their nimbleness to make it impossible for the opponent to catch them. However, once they collided with an opponent's magic treasure, the magic treasure itself would most likely suffer heavy damage. Lu Ping couldn't care less about the flying needle that was 3 feet away from him. His body was drenched in cold sweat, and he forgot to withdraw the protective aura qi around his body. With a wave of the golden scale sword, he charged towards the trapped cultivator in the array formation. The cultivator was at the 4th layer of core forging. If it was on an ordinary day, Lu Ping naturally wouldn't be his opponent. However, Lu Ping was extremely familiar with the array formation of the heavy, profound Immortal's Cave. Taking advantage of the cultivator's greed and arrogance, he imprisoned the cultivator in the array formation and almost turned him into a target. Then, he destroyed his magic treasure, causing him to suffer heavy injuries. Now, Lu Ping had the intention to kill him and steal his treasures. Chapter 299. In the end, Lu Ping still underestimated the strength of a mid-stage core forging cultivator. The arrays inside the profound Heaven's Cave could only be used to trap enemies. Lu Ping wielded the golden scale sword, but it still couldn't do anything to the cultivator trapped inside the array. A muffled sound was heard, and the entire array shook. While the cultivator was resisting Lu Ping's attack, he still had the strength to use a small drumstick to attack the surrounding array. Only now did Lu Ping feel that his offensive methods were really lacking. Aside from the 12 laws, Lu Ping only knew a few sword techniques or magic treasures. The Genshin Grand Array was Lu Ping's last resort, so he naturally wouldn't use it lightly. When Lu Ping was in the blood condensation realm, he could rely on his strong magic power and superb swordsmanship to be invincible among cultivators in the same realm. However, after condensing his gold core, his cultivation was the lowest among cultivators in the same realm. The magic treasures in his hands were no longer as advantageous as before. Moreover, battle techniques that had reached the realm of intent had become common. Some outstanding cultivators, like Zhu Xinming, had already cultivated a minor divine ability. Lu Ping coldly snorted. Just as the cultivator inside the array was attacking in all directions, Lu Ping flicked his hand and threw out a red bead. It was the Scarlet Afterglow bead. The Scarlet Afterglow bead flew above the cultivator, and countless red threads fluttered down, wrapping around the cultivator inside the array. The cultivator seemed to know that this magic treasure was very difficult to deal with. A layer of protective shield lit up in front of him, and a 3-colored halo flowed around the shield. A minor divine ability, another minor divine ability. Lu Ping's own protective earth energy had only condensed 2 kinds of natural oddities, and he still needed one more to form a minor divine ability, the Water Curtain True Astral Shield. As the red threads wrapped around the cultivator's protective earth energy changed into various shapes. It seemed that the cultivator's minor divine ability was not very strong. Natural oddities were very rare. How many people could be like Lu Ping, who used jars and ponds to condense their protective earth energy? The cultivator propped up his protective earth energy to buy time. The small drumstick in his hand flew up and hit the Scarlet Afterglow bead in the air. Lu Ping's golden scale sword parried the 4 top-grade magic treasures that were entangled with it and slashed at the small drumstick. At the same time, the Scarlet Afterglow bead tried to dodge it. However, the Scarlet Afterglow bead, which was in a state of casting, was still a step too late. The golden scale sword was once again entangled by the 4 magic treasures. The small drumstick hit the Scarlet Afterglow bead, causing it to wail and fall down. The already fragile protective magic power, which had been corroded by the myriad poison liquid, was shattered by the landslide. This time, even the cultivator's ears were overflowing with blood, and his face was as pale as paper. The landslide rose and fell again, leaving Lu Ping with a look of despair and disbelief in the mid-core forging cultivator's eyes. Lu Ping swallowed a triple transformation spirit pill. When he was in the blood condensation realm, it was a pill that could restore magic power. But now that Lu Ping had advanced to the core forging realm, it was like trying to put out a burning cart of firewood with a cup of water. Helplessly, Lu Ping could only swallow another triple transformation spirit pill. In this dangerous place, Lu Ping had to constantly adjust himself to his best state. After putting away the cultivator's storage bracelet, there were not many things that could make Lu Ping's eyes light up. The set of 4 top-grade magic tools that could fight against the golden scale sword also did not enter Lu Ping's eyes. Only the small drumstick was a magic treasure. Lu Ping felt that it might be useful to him, so he put it away. Strictly speaking, this unlucky cultivator was not weak. After all, he had 2 magic treasures, the flying needle and the small drumstick. He had also cultivated a small magic power, which could be regarded as quite an achievement among the mid-core forging cultivators. Unfortunately, he fell into Lu Ping's trap and was confined in the narrow space of the array formation. He could only display 60% or 70% of his strength, and in the end, he died in Lu Ping's hands. The heavy, profound Immortal's Cave was growing more and more chaotic. At present, the cultivators from Heaven-Breaking Sword Faction and Water Crystal Palace were attacking the heavy, profound Grand Palace's defensive magic array. The cultivators who were trying to fish in troubled waters were also attacking the Grand Palace in a chaotic manner. The booming sounds of magic arts could be heard without end. However, the Heavy Profound Hall was the most important place in the Heavy Profound Cave Mansion. It was also the main hub of the entire mansion's defensive array. Naturally, it was not something that a few core forging cultivators could easily break. Lu Ping looked at the group of cultivators surrounding the hall. Their cultivation was at least at the mid-core forging stage. With great difficulty, he suppressed the greed in his heart to get a piece of the pie and walked towards the back of the cave mansion. There were many cultivators who had the same idea as Lu Ping. Most of them were single rogue cultivators, or like Lu Ping, whose cultivation was not good enough. These cultivators appeared around the cave mansion, deliberately avoiding each other to avoid conflict. After coming to the cave mansion, Lu Ping naturally had his own purpose, and that was the spiritual vein of the cave mansion. Naturally, Lu Ping would not have the idea of moving the spiritual vein. That was simply an act of courting death. The spiritual vein of this cave mansion could only belong to Skyrind or the Crystal Palace. Moving the spiritual vein was a complicated process, and there was at least a medium spiritual vein in this cave mansion. It was far from the small spiritual vein that Lu Ping had moved before. This was also why the 2 sects were now at ease to attack the Heavy Profound Hall instead of sending people to protect the spiritual vein first. Lu Ping's goal was the spiritual gathering pearl. This cave mansion had been hidden in the sea for nearly 4,000 years. How could a medium spiritual vein not condense a spiritual gathering pearl? The spiritual vein was the foundation of all the defensive arrays in the Heavy Profound Cave Mansion that could last for 4,000 years. Naturally, the protection was extremely tight. What Lu Ping relied on was some of the restrictions of the Fei Ling sect that he learned from the mysterious jade slip that he brought out of Fei Ling Island. Chapter 300. The ground of the Immortal's Cave Mansion was also under the protection of the Immortal's Cave Mansion. DeBeo couldn't use the Earth Escape technique to go underground to find the spiritual vein. After Lu Ping arrived at the Immortal's Cave Mansion, he found a remote place. Seeing that he didn't attract anyone's attention, Lu Ping made a few hand signs in succession. The ground within a radius of 10 feet suddenly rumbled and shook. Then, Lu Ping quickly left. Soon, cultivators who heard the sound came to investigate the nearby area. A moment later, Lu Ping also pretended to be a cultivator who was attracted by the ground shaking and wandered around the area where he had just cast the hand signs. At this moment, 4 cultivators from the Crystal Palace rushed in the direction of Lu Ping. The 4 of them had an aggressive appearance, and the aura of their cultivation pressed down on all the cultivators in the area. The cultivation of the 4 people was not necessarily enough to suppress the cultivators on the spot. Of the 4 people, 2 were at the mid-core forging realm and 2 were at the early core forging realm. One of them had the same cultivation as Lu Ping, but the name of the Crystal Palace was too big. The surrounding cultivators who didn't want to provoke them left the area. Lu Ping also left, but Debao was still underground. Previously, Lu Ping used his half-baked spirit-clear eyes to find that the spiritual qi in this area was the thickest in the Immortals' cave mansion besides the heavy, profound hall. Presumably, this was the place where the spiritual vein of the Immortals' cave mansion passed through. Therefore, Lu Ping broke the restriction on the ground and barely opened an opening. He put Debao in and bet on whether or not he could find the spiritual gathering pearl. This was not like the time when Lu Ping activated the restriction light curtain in the Immortals' cave mansion. This time, it was equivalent to opening a hole in the entire Immortals' cave mansion's protective array. The amount of true essence consumed and the movement caused was naturally not small. After Lu Ping left, he used the invisibility technique and then used the restriction in the cave to cover his tracks. He sneaked back in the dark and watched the 4 people not far away. The 4 cultivators in the Crystal Palace saw that there were no eyesores around them. The 6th-stage core forging realm cultivator, who should be the leader of the 4, said, "Hurry up. Skyrind and the other idiots haven't noticed yet. With the senior brothers there, they will never know that there is another important place in the Heavy Shin Cave besides the refining room, the storage room, and the Heavy Shin Hall." The 4 of them quickly placed an array disc on the ground within a radius of 30 feet. At the same time, they also placed some other spiritual materials in the surroundings in a regular pattern. Lu Ping did not have a deep understanding of array formations, so he could not tell what kind of array formations the 4 of them were setting up. He heard the weakest Crystal Palace cultivator ask, "Senior Brother Mu, the spirit vein in the Heavy Shin Cave Mansion really passes through here. Don't make any mistakes." The leading cultivator of the Crystal Palace with the highest cultivation was Senior Martial Brother Mu. He said, "It can't be wrong. According to the incomplete records in the Fei Ling Sect's Jade Slip we obtained, the spirit vein in Zhong Xin's Immortal Cave indeed passes through here." Another mid-stage core forging realm cultivator interrupted, "Senior Brother Mu is an expert in array formations. His judgment will not be wrong. Let's see if we can gain anything." Another early-stage core forging realm cultivator also curiously asked, "Senior Brother Mu, Senior Brother Gao, what treasure are we looking for this time? Why would Heavy Shin Laozu hide his treasure in the spirit vein?" The 2 mid-stage core forging realm cultivators, Senior Brother Gao and Senior Brother Mu, looked at each other. Senior Brother Gao said, "Junior Brother Zhang, Junior Brother Wan, didn't you notice that as a cave mansion with 2 medium spirit veins, something is missing? It seems like something is missing." Junior Brother Wan, who was first-stage core forging realm, hesitated. Then, he suddenly realized and said, That's right. Such a big cave mansion. Why is there no spirit herb garden in it?" Junior Brother Zhang hesitated and said, "After all, Heavy Shin Laozu is a refiner, not an alchemist. What's wrong with not growing spirit herbs?" Senior Brother Mu shook his head and said, "Junior Brother Zhang was born in a famous cultivation family in the EC. He is also a cultivation genius. Since he was young, he has never lacked all kinds of cultivation resources. In the cultivation world, cultivation resources are always in short supply. Any cultivator who wants to open a cultivation cave will open a spiritual herb garden in any place where spiritual herbs can grow. This is almost common sense. Junior Martial Brother Zhang is already a core forging cultivator. When the time comes, don't forget to open a spiritual herb garden." Junior Brother Zhang blushed and said, "I'm ashamed. Thank you for your advice, Senior Brother." When Junior Brother Wan heard that Senior Brother Mu confirmed his guess, he was surprised and asked, "Why did Heavy Shin Laozu open a spirit herb garden underground?" Senior Brother Mu and Senior Brother Gao looked at each other and smiled. This time, it was Junior Brother Zhang who spoke first. "Is it a spatial magic tool?" Heavy Shin Laozu hid a spatial magic tool underground. Not only is it hidden, but it can also make full use of the power of the spirit vein. Senior Brother Gao praised him. Junior Brother Zhang has a long history of learning, so his knowledge is quite good. As they spoke, the 4 finished setting up the formation. Senior Brother Mu said, "I'm going to open the formation. When the time comes, I will tear a hole in the formation on the ground. Because of the formation's protection, there won't be any movement. Junior brothers, You still have to pay attention to the surroundings to avoid people spying on you. After the two agreed, Senior Brother Mu made a few hand signs and the 4 formation plates were activated. The formation on the ground suddenly cracked a few feet long. Different from Lu Ping, there was no movement around. The formation also didn't react violently like when Lu Ping tore it. When Senior Martial Brother Gao saw that Senior Martial Brother Mu had opened the array formation, he quickly shook the spirit beast pouch on his waist, and a 1-meter-long pangolin fell to the ground. Senior Martial Brother Gao pointed at the ground, and the pangolin immediately disappeared into the ground. Lu Ping listened to the conversation of the 4 and finally understood. No wonder he felt that there was something wrong with the Heavy Xian cave abode, especially when he asked Debeo to look for the spirit gathering pearls in the spirit vein. This feeling was especially strong. He always felt that this cave abode was missing something. It turned out that this cave abode occupied a large area and had a grand atmosphere. However, there wasn't a single spirit herb garden. Immediately, Lu Ping started to worry. The pangolin was obviously a spirit pet controlled by Senior Brother Gao using some kind of forbidden secret technique. Its cultivation had already reached the late blood condensation realm. If they met Debeo underground, Debeo would definitely not be a match for the pangolin. Senior Brother Gao would also know through the pangolin that there were other cultivators coveting the treasures in the spirit vein, even if Lu Ping didn't go for the spatial artifact. Now, they could only pin their hopes on Debeo's sly character. Lu Ping's spirit pets were willing to follow him, and Lu Ping didn't place any restrictions on them. Therefore, Lu Ping knew nothing about Debeo's situation. He could only hope that it could detect danger in advance and escape. Fortunately, although the pangolin was a mid-level demonic beast, and its cultivation was higher than Debeo's, that was only in terms of strength. In terms of earth escape, Debeo was not much weaker than the pangolin. Moreover, when Debeo entered the mid-blood condensation realm, he refined the condensed blood bead from a pangolin, which further enhanced his earth escape. Sure enough, a moment later, Senior Brother Gao shouted, "Not good. There's a demonic beast underground. It's actually a spirit-seeking mouse. It can run very fast. Quickly check if there are other cultivators around." Junior Brother Zhang and Junior Brother Wan heard the news and quickly looked around. Senior Brother Mu frowned and asked, "How is it?" "We haven't found it yet, but we found 2 spirit-gathering pearls. One of them was snatched from the spirit-seeking mouse by Taishan. However, this mouse is very slippery. When it saw that it was no match for Taishan, it turned around and ran." "Ah, Senior Brother, save me." Suddenly, 2 screams came from afar. Senior Brother Mu and Senior Brother Gao were shocked. They quickly took out their magic treasures and got up to help. However, as soon as they moved, cultivators from the east, south, and north surrounded them. A moment later, 3 female cultivators slowly walked over from the west where the screams came from. Lu Ping recognized 2 of them. One was Zhu Xianming, and the other was Chu Ting. Only the one in the middle that Lu Ping didn't recognize was a late-stage core forging cultivator. "Who are you? How dare you kill a disciple of the Crystal Palace? Aren't you afraid that the Crystal Palace will be punished?" Senior Brother Mu asked sternly without a trace of fear. His expression was exactly the same as that of the spiritual master of the Crystal Palace who died in the hands of Lu Ping and the other 2. The Crystal Palace is still as overbearing as ever. Even when death is at hand, they are still so strong. The middle-aged female cultivator who came with Zhu Xinming sneered and said in a sarcastic tone. Chu Ting frowned and said coldly, "Martial Aunt Jiang, it's better to act quickly. We don't want any delay." The middle-aged female cultivator, Martial Aunt Jiang, snorted coldly. She seemed to be very dissatisfied with Chu Ting's tone, but she was also a little afraid. She took out a golden saber and rushed toward the 2 mid-stage core forging cultivators of the Crystal Palace. The other 5 cultivators, except for Chu Ting, also launched a siege. Senior Brother Mu and Senior Brother Gao were no match for 4 hands. Not to mention that there was not only a late-stage core forging cultivator holding the line, but the other 4 were also not ordinary mid-stage core forging cultivators. The 2 of them had just sent out a talisman for help, and a moment later, they were beaten to death by the 5 people. Chu Ting came to the place where Senior Brother Mu had torn open the protective array. After melting an elixir in her hand, She sprinkled the elixir liquid on the ground. Suddenly, a rich fragrance wafted in the air. Chu Ting made a few hand signs, and the elixir liquid soaked into the soil. The fragrance in the air immediately disappeared. Lu Ping looked at the elixir in Chu Ting's hand with a solemn expression. He was already holding the golden scale sword in his hand, ready to attack at any time. The leader, Martial Ant Jiang, urged, "Girl Chu, are you done?" The two people of the Crystal Palace had already sent out a talisman for help. If the heavy mystery hall had not been breached and the cultivators were not fighting for the treasures inside, the cultivators of the Crystal Palace would have already come to help. Mei Qin is getting more and more arrogant. She only sent out a first-stage core forging girl for such an important mission. Chu Ting was focused on the matter in front of her and ignored Martial Ant Jiang's mockery. Zhu Xinming, who was beside her, said coldly, "She doesn't need to deal with these trivial matters. Martial Ant Jiang is enough to deal with it. My master is about to break through to the Dharma realm. If there is anything that Martial Ant Jiang is unable to do, my master will naturally take care of it." Zhu Xinming mocked her for making a mountain out of a molehill and saying that she was not as smart as a mortal Mei. Martial Ant Jiang was about to explode, but when she heard Zhu Xinming say that my master is about to break through to the Dharma realm, she forcibly suppressed her anger. The other three mid-stage core forging cultivators were like clay statues, ignoring the confrontation between Martial Ant Jiang and Zhu Xinming. At this moment, a hole suddenly appeared in the ground. Lu Ping, who was hiding at the side, felt his heart skip a beat. Then he saw a pangolin with blurred eyes coming out of the ground. After senior brother Gao of the Crystal Palace died, as a forbidden beast, the pangolin would also be seriously injured. It might even lose its mind and die of madness. However, Chu Ting had used some kind of elixir to lure the pangolin out of the ground. Lu Ping had obviously guessed what Chu Ting was going to do and was worried that Debao would also be lured out by her. Therefore, he was prepared to snatch the pangolin when he appeared. Chu Ting patted the pangolin's head with her palm. The pangolin opened its mouth and spat out 5 spirit-gathering pearls, 1 big and 4 small, and then fell to the ground, dead. Chu Ting put the 5 pearls away and said, "It's a pity that the pangolin didn't find a spatial instrument in the spirit vein. But it's not bad to have 5 spirit-gathering pearls. This big one is obviously enough to nurture a small spirit vein. Who dares to kill a disciple of the Crystal Palace?" As soon as Chu Ting's voice fell, an angry roar came. Before the person arrived, his aura had already oppressed them. "Oh no, it's a master at the peak of the core forging realm. Damn it, what are those cultivators in the boudoir doing to collect information? I can't believe there's such a master among the cultivators of the Crystal Palace." Martial Uncle Jiang hurriedly cursed. He reached out his hand and smashed the array plates set by the cultivators of the Crystal Palace. The torn array on the ground immediately closed up. At this moment, a figure was rushing toward them from the direction of the heavy mystery palace. "Go!" Martial Uncle Jiang shouted. The 6 cultivators of the core forging realm in the boudoir quickly flew away. The master of the Crystal Palace, who was chasing after them, roared angrily and chased in the direction of the 6 cultivators. Chapter 301. This is... Lu Ping looked at the small golden house in his hand in surprise. Was this the spatial magic item that Lao Zhu of Zhongxian had hidden in the spiritual vein? Lu Ping knew that he had taken advantage of the Crystal Palace this time. His facial expression changed a few times. He poured a stream of Zhen Yuan into the golden house, intending to refine it. Unexpectedly, when Lu Ping's Zhen Yuan poured into the golden house, it was like entering a bottomless pit. Lu Ping was startled. Although this golden house was not a cave magic item, its quality was definitely above Qian Zhongsu. It gave Lu Ping the feeling that he had when he refined the Nachuan cauldron. With Lu Ping's strength of core forging stage, he actually could not refine it in a short period of time. Lu Ping decisively stopped the input of Zhen Yuan. Now is not the time to refine the magic item. After putting the golden house into the storage ring, Lu Ping walked towards the heavy mystery palace that was about to collapse. He mixed in with the cultivators who were still wandering around the heavy mystery palace looking for treasures. At this moment, most of the restrictive spells in the heavy, profound Immortal's cave had been broken by the cultivators by force. Apart from the artifact forging room, storage room, and heavy, profound Grand Hall, which were the three most important places that had been looted by the Crystal Palace and Sky-Splitting Sword Sect, there were still many other buildings. The defensive formations of these buildings had been broken by the cultivators who came later and looted them wantonly. Quite a number of cultivators who were favored by fate had obtained a lot of benefits. However, what followed were scenes of battles between other cultivators driven by greed. Lu Ping wandered in the heavy mystery palace. It was already empty. The ground was a mess. Many magic items, jade slips, jade boxes, and jade bottles were scattered on the ground. It could be seen that when the heavy mystery palace was broken by the cultivators, there was a chaotic battle. Lu Ping was wondering how the palace could hold up until now and had not collapsed. With a slight movement of his divine mind, he found that there were a large number of arrays, restrictions, and talismans flashing on the walls of the palace from time to time. Along the way, it could be said that Lu Ping had mastered a lot of the restriction spells of Failing Sect that he had learned from the mysterious Jade Slip. Seeing the flickering lights on these walls, his face suddenly changed dramatically. Lu Ping rushed out of the heavy, profound Grand Hall and saw that there were still a large number of cultivators shuttling back and forth inside the cave mansion. Many cultivators who were unwilling to give up were still rummaging through the various buildings, hoping to find the hidden treasures. As Lu Ping rushed out of the cave abode, he cast a sound amplification spell and shouted, "Everyone, retreat quickly. The protective array is about to collapse." When the cultivators in the cave heard this, their expressions changed dramatically. They quickly looked up at the light shield of the protective array above their heads. They saw that the seawater outside the light shield was constantly turbulent. From time to time, the fish in the sea curiously bumped into the light shield and peeped at the situation inside the cave. There was no change on the light shield. There were no signs of it collapsing. When the crowd saw that the cultivator who issued the warning was only a first-stage core forging cultivator, they all cursed. What kind of knowledge does this kid have? What nonsense! How can the protective array arranged by heavy, profound Grand Hall Laozu collapse so easily? I'm afraid this kid wants to scare us away and then come back to take advantage of us. Quickly get out of here, or you'll stay here forever. Lu Ping turned a deaf ear to the curses and threats from the others and continued running out of the cave dwelling. He didn't have the time to stop and explain in detail. He was running for his life now, and he had already done his part by reminding them before he left. There were also cultivators who heard Lu Ping's warning and wanted to retreat. Seeing that Lu Ping left without looking back, some cultivators who originally thought that Lu Ping had some kind of plan also hesitated. In any case, the cave abode had almost been cleaned up by the cultivators. Staying here was just to pick up some scraps that were looked down upon and hope to find some undiscovered treasures. When Lu Ping came out of the cave abode's protective array, he looked back and found that less than half of the cultivators had followed him out. Lu Ping sighed and quickly fled towards the sea. Although core forging stage cultivators didn't fear the pressure of the seawater at the bottom of the sea, when the great array protecting array collapsed, the seawater suddenly pressed down. Even late core forging stage cultivators wouldn't be able to bear the consequences. Just as Lu Ping came out of the sea, a muffled rumbling sound suddenly came from the bottom of the sea. Then, the calm sea suddenly sank several tens of feet, and the surrounding seawater surged, creating waves that were tens of feet high. The waves rippled into the distance and directly destroyed a reef island not far away. The cultivators who followed Lu Ping out of the sea looked at the scene in front of them with lingering fear. Lu Ping glanced at them indifferently, turned around, and turned into a stream of water and flew away. Not long after Lu Ping left, more than 10 core forging enlightened masters rushed out of the sea in a sorry state. Surprisingly, half of these enlightened masters were late core forging cultivators, and the rest were mid-core forging cultivators at the 5th or 6th layer. As for early core forging cultivators and blood condensation cultivators, there was not a single one among them. After these enlightened masters came out, their bodies were wet and their hair was disheveled. Many of the cultivators' protective magic tools and magic treasures were broken into pieces, and many of them coughed out a mouthful of blood. Obviously, they were already seriously injured. At this time, Lu Ping was hiding in a cave at the bottom of the sea. The blood condensation demonic beast that originally occupied the cave had already been swallowed by Samling. Now, Lu Dague was crawling at the entrance of the cave to protect Samling. Because it was not easy for him to return to the sea, Samling became playful and had already disappeared without a trace. Lu Ping's entire body was surging with true essence, and his divine sense had already penetrated deep into the golden house. He was only one step away from successfully refining it. In Zhongxian's cave, when Lu Ping received the golden house, he was slightly disappointed. In Lu Ping's opinion, with Zhongxian's Laozu's identity as a grand refiner, this golden house should be a grotto heaven magic treasure. However, it was only a spatial magic tool. However, when Lu Ping began to refine this magic tool, he discovered that the difficulty of refining this golden house was much harder than the Nachuan cauldron. Suddenly, the golden house in Lu Ping's hand shone brightly. Finally, the refining was completed. Lu Ping let out a long sigh. Lu Ping threw the golden house on the ground, and the golden house suddenly became 3 feet big. Lu Ping smiled, reached out, and pushed open the door of the golden house, and walked straight in. The space in the golden house was much larger than the 1,000-bell millet. First, there was a large spirit herb garden. This spirit herb garden had not been taken care of for 4,000 years. It was nourished by the spirit vein underground, and the spirit herbs inside were growing on their own. Although it was messy, and there were more weeds than spirit herbs, each spirit herb was old and full of medicinal power. Moreover, the number of spirit herbs was also very considerable. Lu Ping was overjoyed. Among the spirit herbs here, the majority were millennium spirit herbs, and most of them had already matured. Lu Ping first cleaned up the spirit herb garden and reclaimed it. He then harvested the 1,000-year spirit herbs and 500-year spirit herbs that he could use for alchemy purposes. However, there were still a lot of 1,000-year spirit herbs growing in the garden. Lu Ping didn't know what to do. Because Lu Ping was an alchemy grandmaster, he only had 4 or 5 core forging realm Dan recipes. In addition, he also had the heart-tempering Dan recipe. So, Lu Ping could only look at the 7 or 8 millennium spirit herbs in the spirit herb garden and sigh. At the thought of the heart-dissolving pellet, Lu Ping's heart skipped a beat. Through the spirit herb garden in the golden house, Lu Ping had already collected all the 1,000-year-old spirit herbs he needed to concoct the heart-dissolving pellet. Among the 3 most important spirit herbs, Lu Ping already had 2 of them. Only the yin-yang branch was left. The golden house was buried in the spirit vein of the Zhongxian Immortal's cave for 4,000 years. If Zhongxian Laozu had planted millennium spirit herbs in the golden house, with the additional nourishment from the spirit vein, not only would they have matured, but they would also be able to be used for alchemy. Lu Ping looked around, but he couldn't find any traces of millennium spirit herbs. He couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. When he looked up, Lu Ping suddenly realized that he had only looked at a small space in the golden house. In front of him, there was a huge mountain that was almost 100 feet tall. Lu Ping was very suspicious. The golden house was a spatial magic tool. Compared to other spatial magic tools, the space inside it was too big. It was almost equivalent to a heavenly abode treasure. However, when Lu Ping refined the golden house, he had already confirmed that there was no heavenly abode treasure restriction inside the golden house. Lu Ping started to walk towards the mountain. He seemed to be walking fast, but he was actually walking slowly. In just a moment, he had reached the waist of the mountain. There, he saw a place that was sealed by a magic array. Lu Ping was very happy. Currently, the magic array of Fei Ling sect was almost defenseless against Lu Ping. However, Lu Ping hadn't used the method to open this sealing magic array before. Lu Ping made a few hand seals. After losing the nourishment from the spirit vein, the magic array seal became a lot dimmer. After Lu Ping made the hand seals, a small millennium spirit herb garden appeared in front of Lu Ping's eyes. It was exactly the millennium spirit herb garden that Lu Ping had been hoping for. stone spirit grass, jade imperial flower, 7-star lung leaf grass, cloud jade branch. The corner of Lu Ping's eyes twitched. There were 96 matured millennium spirit herbs here. There were also close to 200 matured millennium spirit herbs that were still growing. This was a place that could tempt even a Dharma adept to go to. What is this? Lu Ping carefully passed through the obstruction of the spirit herbs and arrived in front of a millennium spirit herb. Half of the millennium spirit herb looked withered and ferocious, while the other half was flourishing with leaves and flowers. If this wasn't a yin-yang branch, then what was it? Lu Ping couldn't suppress the joy in his heart. This was because he found another yin-yang branch not far away from this one. Lu Ping carefully picked the 2 yin-yang branches and stored them in a jade essence box that he had prepared in advance. Then, he sealed them with a spirit sealing talisman. All the spirit herbs needed to refine the forging heart pill had been prepared. All that was left was Lu Ping's cultivation and alchemy skills. As long as Lu Ping could improve his cultivation to the second layer of core forging and consolidate it, he could immediately make preparations to advance to the middle stage of core forging. Lu Ping came out of the spirit herb garden and resealed the spirit herb garden with a magic array. Then, he continued towards the top of the mountain. At the center of the lonely mountain in the space of the golden house, a small lake with a circumference of 10 meters appeared in front of Lu Ping. Chapter 302. On the edge of the small lake, there was a stone tablet with 3 ordinary characters engraved on it. Quenching fire pool. Lu Ping couldn't believe his eyes. Was his luck really that good? Lu Ping suppressed the excitement in his heart, and with a step, a stream of Zhen Yuan passed through the ground into the small lake. With the input of Lu Ping's Zhen Yuan, the water in the small lake only made a gurgle sound, and a wave appeared. Lu Ping's Zhen Yuan was so huge that if it was ordinary seawater, it would be enough to make a huge wave that was dozens of feet high. However, in this lake, it could only make a few inconspicuous waves. Lu Ping used the water control technique, and the Zhen Yuan in his body flowed into the lake like a stream, and the lake finally began to slowly ripple. Lu Ping's hands made 9 water control seals in a row, and the whole lake water finally began to slowly flow up after Lu Ping's face turned red. The weight of this lake water was even heavier than gold and iron. Streams of lake water rolled up and recondensed into a huge ball of water in the sky. When Lu Ping's Zhen Yuan was almost consumed by half, the whole lake water was almost lifted into the air by Lu Ping's water control technique. Lu Ping stretched his head to look at the bottom of the lake, and saw a black ball of water the size of a head spinning at the bottom of the lake. Xianyuan heavy water. It really was Xianyuan heavy water. Low-grade heaven tier spirit water of heaven and earth, one of the 4 refining treasures of heavy Xian Laozu. Under the heavy pressure of the lake water in the air, Lu Ping didn't have time to be happy. After confirming that it was indeed Xianyuan heavy water at the bottom of the lake, Lu Ping finally put the ball of water that was affected by the Xianyuan heavy water back into the pool. The dark essence heavy water was a heaven-grade, low-tier spirit water of heaven and earth. How could heavy profound Laozu waste it recklessly and directly use it for quenching? Obviously, under the influence of the dark essence heavy water, this pool of spirit water, which had already mutated into a second-grade spirit material, was used to quench the newly forged spirit tools and magic treasures. The biggest effect of the profound essence heavy water was that after the cultivator fused with it, the spirituality of the spiritual object would be refined into the golden core by the cultivator's divine sense, greatly increasing the capacity of the cultivator's true essence. Therefore, the cultivators who fused with the profound essence heavy water were all people with vigorous and long-lasting true essence. In the process of fighting, they often didn't have to worry about running out of true essence. Once the battle fell into a stalemate or was besieged, these kinds of cultivators were existences that gave their opponents headaches. Just as Lu Ping placed the mutated spirit water back into the small pond, a faint spiritual energy drifted out. Lu Ping naturally felt it, and he felt even more strange in his heart. The space in the Golden House was far beyond that of an ordinary top-tier spatial artifact. It was not a grotto heaven, but there was not only a spiritual herb garden inside it, but also a seemingly meaningless lonely mountain. Now, there was actually a trace of spiritual energy left in this lonely mountain. Lu Ping was sure that there was no spirit vein in this lonely mountain. Moreover, a spatial artifact could not nurture a spirit vein at all, not even a grotto heaven magic treasure. Only when a grotto heaven magic treasure formed a small kiliacosm like the seven-star sky could the spirit vein be moved into the grotto heaven and not dissipate. Thinking of this, Lu Ping was startled. Could it be? Lu Ping flew down the mountain and returned to the door of the golden house. Then, he took out Qianzhong Su and opened the thick book slowly. The space inside the book was about to be revealed in front of the door of the golden house. At this moment, the door of the golden house suddenly opened by itself. Qianzhong Su flew into the golden house, and the two spaces immediately overlapped and merged. Amidst the loud rumbling sound, the merged space continued to expand. Qianzhong Su's body slowly landed on the ground of the space, and then immediately merged with the soil of the spiritual herb garden and disappeared. In the space of the golden house, the area of the spiritual herb garden suddenly expanded by 3 times. The lonely mountain in the space of the golden house was forcibly raised by 500 feet, and it stood tall in the newly expanded space like a heavenly pillar. Inside the Qianzhong Su, Lu Ping's several years of business had all settled down in the newly formed space. It was no longer as crowded as before. Just the peach blossom tree spirit alone took up nearly half of the space of the Qianzhong Su. Not mentioning the shock in Lu Ping's heart, the happiest people at this moment were the 2 Luan birds inside the Qianzhong Su. Lu Qin came to this new world, and she was even more excited. She had already gone to explore this new place, and there was no trace of her. The wooden Luan Yu quickly followed. However, the changes in the space of the Qianzhong Su also made this shy monster dumbfounded. The amethyst wasps swarmed out of their nest. In this vast space, a large number of spiritual herbs had been nurtured for thousands of years. Even ordinary flowers and plants had accumulated for thousands of years, and their flowers contained a large amount of essence of heaven and earth. This was the place where the amethyst wasps brewed nectar and increased their cultivation. After more than 2 years, Lu Ping had already trained this swarm of amethyst wasps into the Dao soldier formation. The amethyst wasps were only 1 step away from entering the blood condensation realm. At that time, Lu Ping's amethyst Dao soldier formation would be able to multiply and expand, and its power would increase further. Fei Ling's sect was so bold. At this moment, Lu Ping finally understood why Fei Ling's sect wanted to forge the 2 strange spatial artifacts, Qianzhong Su and the Golden House. It wasn't to create a grotto heaven, but to create a minor kiliacosm. This was a set of combined artifacts. Each of them could be a separate spatial artifact, but after they were combined, the function of this spatial artifact was far beyond ordinary artifacts. It had the potential to surpass a grotto heaven and become a minor kiliacosm. Fei Ling's sect wanted to build another dojo, or rather, they wanted to move the dojo on Fei Ling Island into this minor kiliacosm. That small mountain was where Fei Ling's sect's dojo was located. The reason why Lu Ping could feel the spiritual energy on the small mountain was because Fei Ling's sect wanted to use the small mountain as a prototype. After it became a minor kiliacosm, it could be used to nurture spirit veins. This was also why Zhongxian Laozu placed the golden house in the spirit vein to nurture. Of course, if he wanted to achieve the foundation of a mini kiliacosm, these 2 spatial celestial devices were far from enough. Perhaps Fei Ling's sect had also refined other matching spatial celestial devices. When they were combined, this space would become larger, and the embryonic form of the world inside would be more complete. Unfortunately, Fei Ling's sect's plan to create a minor kiliacosm had just begun, but it was already destroyed. Otherwise, once it became a minor kiliacosm, the sects in the North Sea might not even be able to find Fei Ling's sect's dojo. Unfortunately, Fei Ling's sect's plan to create a minor kiliacosm had just begun, but it was already destroyed. Otherwise, once it became a minor kiliacosm, the sects in the North Sea might not even be able to find Fei Ling's sect's dojo. Lu Ping swallowed a medicinal pellet and cultivated to recover his lost true essence. At the same time, he was thinking about his future plans. The appearance of the Golden House, the discovery of a large number of thousand-year-old spirit herbs, and the mystic heavy water forced Lu Ping to adjust his cultivation plan. One day later, Samling, who was playing outside, suddenly ran back in a panic. Lu Ping was shocked, and he immediately realized that he had been careless. As Samling's cultivation became higher, the characteristics of the green sea snake on his body became more and more obvious. The identity of the green sea snake was extremely special among the demon race. If he was discovered by other demon cultivators or human cultivators, it would be a disaster for him. There was no time to communicate with Samling, so Lu Ping directly put Samling into the Golden House. That place was naturally much stronger than the spiritual beast pouch that could only be used for hibernation. Then, he came out of the underwater cave and came to the surface of the sea. He felt waves of spiritual energy coming from the surface of the sea a few miles behind him, and from time to time, he could also hear the dull roars of spells. Lu Ping spread out his divine sense and did not find any danger lying in ambush nearby. So, he summoned Samling and asked him a few questions. Then, he frowned and looked at the source of the spiritual energy fluctuations behind him. It turned out that when Samling was playing in the sea, someone had discovered his identity and chased after him. The direction of the person chasing him was the direction of the battle. Lu Ping muttered to himself for a while, then used the invisibility art and slowly approached the battle. The roars of spells were getting louder and louder. Lu Ping carefully spread out his divine sense. In front of him, there were two early-stage core forging cultivators fighting. One of them was even someone that Lu Ping knew. Lu Ping had a strange expression on his face. He used his divine sense to probe the other person. Unexpectedly, that person was extremely vigilant. His divine sense, which was no weaker than Lu Ping's, formed a wall and firmly blocked Lu Ping's divine sense. "Since you're here, then show yourself." Since he had been discovered, there was no need for Lu Ping to hide, so he flew over the sea. The cultivator who had discovered Lu Ping did not give up on attacking Lu Ping just because it was difficult to tell if he was a friend or foe. Obviously, he thought that with Lu Ping's appearance, even his enemies could not do anything to him. Ever since Chu Ting learned about the appearance of Zhong Xian's cave mansion, she planned an attack on the Crystal Palace with her boudoir. However, after the operation began, a series of bad luck found her. First, after killing the 4 core forging masters of the Crystal Palace, she did not find the spatial magic tool that Zhong Xian Laozu might have hidden in the underground spirit vein. Then, she did not expect that there was a peak core forging master among the cultivators of the Crystal Palace, and he chased her all the way. During the battle, several people in the boudoir were injured. If it weren't for Martial Uncle Yang, who suddenly appeared out of nowhere and joined forces with Martial Uncle Jiang to block the pursuit of the peak core forging master of the Crystal Palace, the boudoir would have fallen into the siege of the cultivators of the Crystal Palace. Just when Chu Ting thought that everyone was out of danger, the boudoir, the Crystal Palace, and the cultivators of Skyrend who were watching from afar were suddenly ambushed by dozens of EC demon cultivators. After the battle, everyone split up to break out of the encirclement. Chu Ting escaped under the cover of second senior sister Zhu Xianming and Martial Uncle Yang, but she encountered the demon cultivator in front of her. This graceful demon cultivator was originally pursuing something, but as soon as he saw Chu Ting, he was instantly shocked by her beauty, and he'd long since forgotten about his pursuit and insisted on taking Chu Ting as his wife. How could Chu Ting be willing to allow that? Thus, the two of them started fighting. Chu Ting was carefully guided by Taoist Plum, and she was talented. With her master-level alchemy skills, she pushed her cultivation to the peak of the first level of the core forging realm in just 3 to 4 years. She was proud and arrogant, and she had always looked down on cultivators of the same level. Chu Ting originally thought that although the cultivation of the third-level core forging realm demon cultivator was far above her, it would be easy for her to escape. She did not expect that the strength of the person in front of her was so much higher than her. No matter what Chu Ting used, the person in front of her was able to resolve it. Looking at the person in front of her calmly dealing with her attacks, obviously thinking of capturing her alive after her chi was exhausted. Chu Ting suddenly felt a burst of powerlessness. Chu Ting did not expect to meet Lu Ping in this situation. Chapter 303. Without saying a word, Lu Ping's golden scale sword soared into the air and slashed at the beast cultivator. In the sky, the golden scale sword absorbed more than 600 psychic sword lights into its body. Lu Ping had used almost all his strength in this attack. The beast cultivator's calm expression turned serious after witnessing Lu Ping's swordsmanship. But then, he said indifferently, "Ha, this is what you humans call a hero saving a damsel in distress, right? You are indeed capable. But in the end, this beauty is still mine." After the beast cultivator advanced to the core forging stage and transformed into a human, he had the power to open a mansion and set up a government office in the demon clan. Unlike the core forging stage human cultivators who called themselves Taoist masters, the beast cultivator preferred to call himself mansion master. A gourd suddenly appeared in the beast cultivator's hand. He tipped the mouth of the gourd down, and a dark blue wave swept out towards the golden scale sword that was slashing at him. The golden scale sword shook, as if it had turned into a big fish swimming against the current, trying to ignore the impact of the dark blue water and continue to slash at the beast cultivator. Unexpectedly, once the golden scale sword came into contact with the dark blue water, Lu Ping suddenly felt an invisible force tearing the golden scale sword's body from all sides. Not only could the golden scale sword not maintain its countercurrent posture in the water, but even Lu Ping's divine sense was greatly disturbed when it came into contact with the golden scale sword. The golden scale sword's momentum was fierce, but it slashed at him as if it was drunk. The beast cultivator laughed loudly and said, "Although your swordsmanship is strong, what can you do to my precious gourd? This extreme blue magnetic water is a rare treasure that I found in the depths of the East Sea. It's the best to break magic tools and magical powers like yours." Lu Ping snorted coldly. This extreme blue magnetic water could at most restrain his swordsmanship. To say that it could break Lu Ping's swordsmanship was the beast cultivator's verbal attack. The golden scale sword shook. Without the influence of the extreme blue magnetic water, Lu Ping's huge divine sense immediately regained control of the golden scale sword. The beast cultivator smiled and said, "What a powerful divine sense. It seems that you have cultivated many secret techniques, but are you also an alchemist like this beauty? Or are you an array master? However, this palace master's divine sense is not inferior to yours." Chu Ting placed her high-grade pill furnace above her head, firmly protecting herself. At the same time, she controlled the bright yellow flames to fight against the enemy. At the same time, Lu Ping saw a wind bag appear in Chu Ting's hand. As she controlled the flames, the wind bag blew out a scorching gust of wind. The wind increased the intensity of the flames, causing the power of Chu Ting's bright yellow flames to greatly increase, burning towards the Yao cultivator. The demonic cultivator blew at the mouth of the gourd. This time, a muffled roar came from the gourd. A gale swept out and immediately suppressed Chu Ting's wind bag. The bright yellow flame was blown back by the gale from the gourd and burned towards Chu Ting. Fortunately, Chu Ting's fire control technique was excellent. The demonic cultivator was not too ruthless. Before the flames burned her, Chu Ting regained control of the flames. She did not let the fire seed she had refined burn her. Otherwise, it would really be a joke if it was spread out. The demonic cultivator also had an expression of lingering fear. He said, "Fortunately, I was too heavy-handed this time and almost hurt this palace master's beauty." Chu Ting's face was as gloomy as water. On the surface, she seemed to ignore the demonic cultivator's incessant chatter, but in her heart, she was already furious. Both Lu Ping and Chu Ting were alchemists. They had their own experiences in the cultivation of divine sense. Their achievements were far beyond cultivators of the same level. Moreover, the demonic cultivator's divine sense cultivation was also quite extraordinary. It far surpassed Chu Ting's and was on par with Lu Ping's. Lu Ping and Chu Ting joined forces to fight against the enemy. However, the demonic cultivator still looked calm. However, His eyes swept away the laziness from before. He said to Lu Ping, "It seems that you are not an alchemist. You are obviously cultivating a water-attributed cultivation method. Moreover, your attainments in it are extremely high. In the future, if your cultivation is like this palace master, I am afraid that even this palace master will not be your opponent." After Lu Ping's help, the main attack against the demonic cultivator became Lu Ping. Chu Ting could only play a role in restraining the demonic cultivator. The demonic cultivator also became more serious when facing the two of them together. Chu Ting looked at Lu Ping with some surprise. She naturally knew that Lu Ping was an authentic alchemist. Moreover, after the Northern Alliance elixir gathering, he defeated the elite alchemists of Purple Talisman Pavilion, Wind and Thunder Island, and Skyrend. His performance in the elixir gathering showed that his alchemy skills were now above hers. At this time, after being inadvertently reminded by the demonic cultivator, she discovered that Lu Ping actually cultivated a water-attributed cultivation method. What was even more incredible was that at this time, Lu Ping's cultivation had also reached the peak of the first layer of the core forging realm. How could this not surprise Chu Ting? Chu Ting had never admired any cultivator of the same generation. Previously, Lu Ping had at most made her think highly of him. Now, Chu Ting inexplicably felt a trace of admiration for Lu Ping. Using a water-attributed cultivation method to control the fire seed in alchemy, how much effort and price must be paid to achieve the achievement of an alchemy grandmaster? The gourd in the demonic cultivator's hand was obviously a treasure. When Lu Ping and Chu Ting joined forces to fight, the gourd had already spat out 3 kinds of heaven and earth mysterious treasures of water, wind, and fire, which made Lu Ping very envious. The demonic cultivator's expression changed, and suddenly a strange fan appeared in his hand. He waved it to his side, and with a hum sound, the nether water sword, which had already sneaked 10 feet away from the demonic cultivator, was sent flying by the fan. Taking advantage of the moment when the demonic cultivator's attention was attracted by the nether water sword, a bronze mirror suddenly appeared in Lu Ping's hand. A golden light flashed from the mirror and instantly sank into the gourd in the demonic cultivator's hand. The red flame spewing out of the gourd suddenly stagnated, and then returned to normal. Chu Ting, who was suppressed by the red flame, suddenly crushed a pinky-sized black object in her hand. Then, she stretched out her hand and sprinkled the black powder into the bright yellow flame. The bright yellow flame, which was originally in decline, suddenly rose and pushed back the red flame. The demonic cultivator glanced at the golden mirror in Lu Ping's hand and shook the gourd in his hand. The red flame suddenly stopped retreating. Lu Ping's golden scale sword changed, and he used the 1,000 Piles Snow sword art. Among the 1296 sword lights, there were 648 psychic sword lights, which turned into 3 sword waves and rushed toward the demonic cultivator. The demonic cultivator's face was solemn. He stretched out his hand and pointed, and the gourd once again spewed out the extreme blue magnetic water toward the sword waves. However, the psychic sword lights in each sword wave suddenly jumped out, each turning into a sword dragon, which passed through the obstruction of the extreme blue magnetic water and rushed toward the demonic cultivator. The demonic cultivator was not afraid in the face of danger. He waved the strange fan in his hand, and a sword dragon was suddenly blown into pieces. The demonic cultivator pointed to the gourd again, and a gust of wind swept out, and another sword dragon was blown into dizziness. The third sword dragon had already approached. The demonic cultivator curled his lips, and a rotating shield suddenly lit up around his body. Protective small magical power. The sword jiao was instantly shredded into pieces. The enlightened master looked at Lu Ping mockingly, only to see Lu Ping still pointing his finger at him. The golden scale sword that was hidden among the shredded sword jiao abruptly flew out and, to the enlightened master's surprise, the golden scale sword shattered the enlightened master's small defensive skill. Jin Yuan Sword Qi. Before the demonic cultivator broke free from the surprise, his face suddenly changed, and a golden halberd appeared in his hand again, directly blocking in front of him. Dang! The water nether sword was knocked away by the halberd. Lu Ping's mind trembled, and the body of the water nether sword was obviously damaged. This halberd was the demonic cultivator's life source magic weapon. The golden halberd in the demonic cultivator's hand exuded a dazzling brilliance, and the surrounding spirit chi, under the influence of the halberd, seemed to be restless. The golden scale sword followed closely after the water nether sword, but was knocked away by the halberd. The halberd then swept horizontally, wanting to completely break the golden scale sword. Obviously, the halberd's quality was far above the golden scale sword. The corner of Lu Ping's mouth twitched, and the golden scale sword deftly avoided the sweep of the halberd, luring it away from the demonic cultivator's side. Immediately after, a behemoth suddenly appeared above the demonic cultivator's head, silently falling towards the demonic cultivator. When the demonic cultivator sensed that something was wrong, Landslide was already right in front of him. At this moment, the demonic cultivator's face finally changed, not in fear, but in rage. The demonic cultivator in front of him suddenly disappeared, and a behemoth that Lu Ping had never seen before suddenly appeared in front of the two. It was a giant fish. The giant fish leaped up, and its huge fish tail drew a beautiful arc in the air, colliding with the falling Landslide. The surface of the sea suddenly became turbulent, and waves tens of feet high were stirred up. Some were caused by the Landslide colliding with the fishtail, and some were caused by the giant fish leaping into the sea. Landslide flew away in response, and Lu Ping's divine sense suffered another heavy blow. Immediately, he had a splitting headache, and the golden core in his heart core space also jumped. Kuan fish. Chu Ting's face finally changed. Hurry up and go. Lu Ping shouted to Chu Ting beside him, and then turned into a stream of water, fleeing into the distance. Chu Ting woke up from her shock, and bright yellow flames wrapped her whole body, turning into a yellow light in the sky, and instantly caught up with Lu Ping. A dull roar came from the bottom of the sea, and traces of blood appeared on the surface of the sea. A solemn voice came from the bottom of the sea. This palace master's surname is Kong Yuan. Do you dare to leave your names? Lu Jiao. Chu Ting. We will meet again in the future, and then we will decide who is the winner. Kong Yuan's voice came from afar, but he could no longer hear Lu Ping and Chu Ting's reply. An island-like ridge flashed on the surface of the sea, and the roaring waves spread out, only calming down after an unknown amount of time. Outside of Silver Sword Island, two streaks of light, one fire and one water, descended from the sky. Chu Ting's face was deathly pale, and Lu Ping coughed a few times. He coughed so quickly that traces of blood could be seen at the corner of his mouth. How are you? Chu Ting asked gratefully. I'm fine. Lu Ping swallowed a threefold vitality-augmenting pill. Seeing the pill in Lu Ping's hand, Chu Ting was stunned. Lu Ping glanced at her and nonchalantly put the jade bottle of threefold vitality-augmenting pill into his storage ring. Why did you appear here? This time, it was Lu Ping's turn to ask her. He, Liang Xianfeng, and Zhu Xianming had come to Silver Sword Island to explore Zhong Xian's cave mansion. Presumably, he could not hide it from Chu Ting. However, what puzzled Lu Ping was why Chu Ting was separated from her boudoir and was being hunted by the demon cultivators alone. Composing herself, Chu Ting roughly told Lu Ping about how her boudoir ambushed the Crystal Palace cultivators in Zhong Xian's cave mansion, and how they were ambushed by the demon cultivators. Of course, she only briefly mentioned the matter of them trying to seize Zhong Xian's spatial artifact hidden in the spirit vein by Lao Zhu. Lu Ping was well aware of this, so he naturally did not say anything. What? Martial Uncle Yang Xianfeng was seriously injured? Lu Ping's expression changed, and he asked, You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.